All right, hello everybody, and welcome to this week's AEW Dynamite review show. We're talking about blood and guts, the whole ordeal, and I'm here again, as promised, with the Ashley Mann. Ashley, how you doing?
Doing great, Mimi. Thank you so much for having me again. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good on this wonderful Thursday morning. So, for those of you who don't know, I think I said it before. Ashley actually got to go to the show live. So we've got two very different perspectives for you. We were talking about it a little bit last night and before the show. What exactly went down last night that was a little bit of a bummer?
Yeah, so we got to the arena and about 5 minutes before the actual show started, about like around 7:55, Tony Khan actually came out and said that the first hour was essentially he classified it as a cinematic approach, but essentially what he was referring to was they had already taped the first hour in those matches prior. So I'm not sure if they had taped it all earlier that day or if they had taped it in the previous week. But yeah, so the first hour, all those matches were pre-recorded. So we actually, as the fans, just sat there and watched the matches on the big screen. He did say that we were going to be the live audience though, so I'm not sure how the reaction came across on TV, but he stated that for us to react like we were watching it live. And to, I guess, the fans' credit, the majority of them did. We were, once he made that announcement, like, a lot of people started booing because, of course, we were upset, right? Like, I was looking forward to seeing Cody, John Moxley, like, Kenny Omega. Like, it had, the lineup was like a pay-per-view feel, right? And to take out pretty much half of the lineup there was kind of a bummer, but he did offer to refund anyone if they wanted to leave within like the first 45 minutes. So he was really accommodating and everything like that, but I was not too happy.
Yeah, understandably so. I'm curious to know what the plan was. Like, I have a feeling that wasn't the original plan because I bet they would have said something before they sell the tickets. I was telling my fiance actually
Yeah.
when he told me last night. I said like, when you build a good enough rapport with your fans, you almost have some kind of trust where like again, the guy seems like a good guy. It doesn't seem like he's trying to scam anybody. What I said is I have a feeling that that wasn't the original plan. Something must have happened or something must have gone down. And to inform everybody before the actual show started, like before he actually did, try to tell everybody,
hmm
that already bought tickets, 2 days before. I'm sure would have been much more difficult than just making the announcement there. But I'm sorry about that. That is a pain in the butt. But at least you still got to see Blood and Guts live, right? And we're going to get into all of that, obviously. Overall, before we get into the whole thing, again, I know it was a little bit different for you there, watching some of it on the screen, hard to see, but what did you think of the show as a whole? Not just obviously the last match.
Yeah, no, and like you said, and that was the main thing. I was telling one of my other friends, like, it it was amazing to see the reaction to that, and in my mind, like, I immediately went to, like, I wonder what would, if the response would have been if this was a WWE show, because I think, to AEW and Tony Khan's credit, like you said, he has built up such good rapport and goodwill with the fan base. Now, not to say that he can continue to do stuff like that and, like, take advantage and or anything like that, but I think what you said there is a valid point. I think there may have been something because it looks like the main issue was once they built the cage around the ring, there was no way for them to raise it. So obviously, like, there's problems there. So I'm not sure if they didn't anticipate that going into it, but I definitely don't think it was something that they deliberately did. But it would have been nice to know, like, the second they found out, like, I don't know, it was just kind of a little interesting tidbit there. But the rest of the show was great, and we actually. So when Kenny Omega came out to do his interview with Tony Schiavone, that was the first wrestler that we had actually seen the whole night. That was the first, like, besides Justin Roberts, that was the first person that we had seen come out besides Tony Khan. So that's why I'm not sure how it came across on TV, but if he got like a really good reaction or if you heard like people chanting his name, that was why we were just so excited to actually see someone finally come out. But and then of course the rest of the night went on pretty well, but I know we'll get into the main event and like the specifics there, but overall the whole vibe of the show was just a fun time, even though to take in the first hour into consideration.
Yeah, wrestling fans are the most loyal fans, so I could understand the booing in the beginning, but I'm sure most people, I bet a lot of people didn't get up and leave too.
No one did. No one
Yeah,
did.
yeah, I would assume so. Well, yeah, I mean, My only guess is it's an outside stadium, correct?
Yes.
So that's probably, maybe they just didn't anticipate how long it was going to be to put the cage together or something along those lines, but, and then couldn't. But on the actual, I'm sure you saw too, on the actual screen when you were watching the first hour that was not live, even though it said live, oddly enough, they did have the 2 rings. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like, you could see that they were
wow.
wrestling in one ring versus the other. So, well, kind of
Okay.
similar to like a War Games. I think they do the same thing in that. But nonetheless, let's just jump right into it because I know we got a time constraint on us here. So first up on the card was the AEW World Champion Kenny Omega and Michael Nakazawa versus Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. And I'll recap this match real quick. Don Callis was the first one who came out. He talks up Nakazawa as one of the greatest in the lineage of Japanese pro wrestlers. And then says that Kenny Omega isn't here, but what do you know? Kenny Omega is here. Attacks Moxley with the title belt before the bell. And then when the match starts, Nakazawa is beating up Kingston, but obviously Moxley gets the hot tag. He gets some suicide dives, brawling out on the floor. Kingston gets a near fall on Nakazawa, and then, of course, the low blow from Nakazawa to Eddie and starts choking him with a lanyard. Brutal. Kingston dodges a moonsault from Omega and hits him with an axe bomber, and then we get another tag made. Big German suplex, pile driver, near fall. Eddie Kingston throws him out of the ring, throws Kenny Omega out of the ring, and Moxley and Nakazawa are in the ring, and Moxley's got him in the sleeper. And then we got the whole Kingston holding the ropes so Kenny can come back in the ring, but he does this cowardly heel thing and leaves Nakazawa to get the half Nelson clothesline thing for the pin. And obviously the winners were Kingston and Jon Moxley. Before we get to the after the match thing, do you have any comments on the match itself? Myself, I'll tell you, I was kind of disappointed. I thought this was going to be funnier. I didn't expect this to I feel like they missed the boat on what this probably was supposed to be, which was, I just didn't expect a great wrestling match out of this whole thing, and I'm, frankly, kind of just sick of the Moxley Omega stuff. I just feel like it's lost most of its juice. So I'm ready for them to move on to the tag team titles, to go start going after the Young Bucks, and we got to see that later on, obviously in the show. But so the match itself, I don't know. I'm so used to these great openers from Hangman Page, or like if I were Tony Khan, I would have put Ray Phoenix on this show just to. You've got casual fans probably watching because of the Blood and Guts thing. If I were a casual fan watching this, I would have been confused and unimpressed. Probably is the best take I can give on this. But what did you think?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there, and that is a good point with the opening match. That was an interesting way for them to start off the night. And like you said, I'm just kind of confused with what direction they're going in with Moxley and Kingston, because correct me if I'm wrong, but there was no stipulation for this tag team match when they won, right? Because from last week, they were so pressed to get Kenny in the tag match and get him to agree with it. Obviously they're threatening to break his Nakazawa's ankle unless Kenny agreed to it. Or I'm sorry, they were threatening to break Kenny Omega's ankle before Don Callis agreed to it. But there was never any stipulation. There was never any, if we win the match, then we get a tag team title opportunity or anything like that. So I'm just kind of confused which direction they're actually going to go in. If now, since they did win that match, if they're going to focus solely on the Young Bucks. But then you have SCU, who just won that match, which we'll get into later on. So I'm kind of confused as well which direction they're really going to, especially with Double or Nothing being not too far away, maybe about 3 weeks away now. So I'm kind of confused and I guess slightly interested, but I'm kind of let down with what they're doing with Moxley and Kingston right now. Besides their work on the mic, I haven't really been impressed with the direction. I feel like there's no solid direction right now. I think that's what my issue is with them as a team and at that story in and of itself. So I can't really get too emotionally invested into it until I can say, okay, they're most definitely going after the tag team title. So, and just to get excited for that. But I just think between that and with Omega, there's really no clear direction yet. And it's just kind of weird.
Yeah, my guess is, and again, this is the nice part, again, similar to what we were talking about in the beginning of the show. When you build a rapport with your fans, you can kind of have seemingly no direction, and we can sit here and still think that they do have a direction, if that makes any sense. Like, just because so many times, especially with Kenny Omega, who I think last time we were together too, I mentioned, like, Kenny thinks in years, doesn't necessarily think, like, he's already, I guarantee, thought about who's beating him for the title, how he's losing it, where he's losing it, all that stuff, like, the minute he actually wins the title. I bet this whole gold collector gimmick was, well thought out before all this stuff even happened. I think Kenny Omega thinks in years, and so for someone who watches episodic television, it's kind of hard to get a lot of the times. I think that's why Moxley was almost more fun as a champion. Not just because of the whole heel babyface difference, but just he probably thinks a little bit more week to week. So my guess is the direction is that this was, I think they're 2-0 now in tag team matches, Kingston and Moxley. So my guess is that they're going to get a couple more wins on Dark and Dark Elevation and stuff like that, and then we're going to talk about the ranking system more in this show, too, because there's so many flaws to point out. But I like the idea of that they have to, go up in the ranking system. So I'm guessing SCU, hot take or whatever before we actually get into it, is SCU is probably going to lose. And then, by the time we get to the pay-per-view, we're going to have the number one contenders being Moxley and Kingston. That's my guess. That's kind of why I think this worked as a supposedly fun little tag team match, but it's also a win under the notch of Moxley and Kingston's belt, and so that's how they can count it, I guess. That's my guess. But again, I don't know, but I do always have faith in AEW that they have a plan. I just probably don't know it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100% there as well. And like we mentioned earlier, that goodwill that AEW builds up, that means a lot, right? Because if it was WWE, we would for sure be crapping on it in a completely different way. But even though it's weird and we don't really know the direction, you're still engaged and you still want to know it. You're not disconnected from it. So it's just a different approach. But I do agree with you there. I believe SCU will end up losing, but it's going to be interesting to see where they go with that direction as well, because I believe it was on either Dark or Elevation or one of those shows that Frank had said the next match that they lose, they're done as a tag team. So I bet for them to go up against the Bucks, that would be a pretty poetic way for them to end their run as a tag team. And then that would set up Moxley and Kingston as well. But yeah, I would totally be down for Kingston and Moxley as tag team champions, though.
Yeah, I think
that's way in the future, but they're just such a good tag team
and so much fun to watch. Yeah, I'm excited for that too. Hopefully they get the win, obviously. But so I guess that leads us into the after the match. We get the Young Bucks coming out in these atrocious outfits once again. I love it every week. It gets better and better. They come out and distract Mox and Kingston so the Good Brothers can ambush them from behind. They hit Mox with the Magic Killer, and then they start hitting Mox and Kingston with their shoe and super kicks. And then, of course, Kenny Omega comes back out with Brandon Cutler, the personal cameraman, and hits Moxley with the one-winged angel and, quote-unquote, covers Eddie for a pointless 3 count just to be a dick. And, yeah, so we get more... This is my problem, I guess, with the Moxley and Kingston thing is we talk about them going in a tag team direction, but why is Kenny Omega doing this stuff to Kingston and Moxley again if they're going more towards the Young Bucks? And I guess that's all speculation on our part, so maybe that's not what's actually going to happen. I just don't really want to see Moxley and Omega again. I don't mind seeing Kingston and Omega, but I also just don't feel like it's the time right now. I think Kingston is on a very subtle road like Hangman, where I think Kingston will be the world champion one day, years, from now, but it's just not time to get back in that picture, if that makes any sense. So even a great main event on Dynamite between Kingston and Omega, I feel like would be a waste of a Kingston championship match. So that's just my thoughts. So again, we talk about the whole Young Bucks, Moxley and Kingston thing, but here at the end of this whole thing is Kenny Omega pinning Eddie Kingston for no reason. So I'm sure that's leading to something between them two. It's better than Moxley and Omega again, I guess. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on the after the match?
Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of over the after the match beatdowns. I feel like it happens every week now, regardless of the faction, but especially with these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fans of the Good Brothers, but I'm just kind of like over them as well. Like they literally don't do anything besides just come out and just beat down whoever, and then like of course like you'll see them in like backstage skits, but it's like, why are they there? Like besides just being friends, like I would have much rather have seen it just be Kenny Omega, Don Callis, and the Young Bucks. It's just I don't know. It's just they kind of have a disconnect with me. And yeah, like I'm kind of over the after the match beatdowns, and I just wish they would kind of do something else or something. I mean, it was fine. It wasn't horrible or anything, but like you said, I'm not really here for another Omega Moxley match. It would be great, of course, but it's like, how do you come back from a death match, right? Like the death match is supposed to be the final, sure, like the final match, and I don't know if you have another rematch, it's like, would it just be a regular match? Like, it's how do you just go back to a regular match after they have a death match? So I don't know. I wouldn't hate it, right? But I'm just kind of looking for something else at this point.
Yeah. I told you, Angela, last time we were reviewing the show, I said, the next match between Mox and Kenny is a Firefly Inferno match.
Yeah, that's right.
The only place you can go from. Though, in all seriousness, they do have, like, very, in places of wrestling that I don't watch regularly, at least, they do have, like, fire matches and, glass, just some crazy violent stuff that is almost, like, too far, if that makes any sense. So that's the only other place I could see them going towards, all jokes aside, but I'm with you. I don't think they're going to go back to the well with Mox and Kenny. I think maybe in a year or two time, I don't think Kenny's going to be the champion by then, but in a year or two time, I think Moxley is going to be your first ever 2-time AEW World Heavyweight Champion. Let me put it that way. I don't know how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, but there's definitely another title reign in Moxley's future. But my guess is we go Eddie Kenny for a title match, which I think is silly, and then hopefully we get to the whole tag team thing, but who knows. They didn't also mention if SCU versus Young Bucks is at the pay-per-view or not.
That's what I was wondering.
They said
as well.
It's next week, they said. I take it back.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's going to be next week.
Okay.
But, so maybe we still have time for the Young Bucks versus Moxley and Kenny Omega, but let's move on, because, again, I always say we could talk about Kenny Omega and the web of Kenny Omega for an entire podcast. And we'll talk more about him later. I thought he did some brilliant work later on in the show. But next we got Britt Baker and Hikaru Shida announced for Double or Nothing. I hopped out of my chair. I was so hyped about this. Obviously, there are problems with this. If you think about the ranking system and the difference between some of the ranking systems, all of a sudden she's number one and she gets a title match like that. Meanwhile, how long was Hangman Page number one and never got a title match? How long was SCU number one and still didn't get a title match? Had to do this whole tag team thing, and again, we'll talk about that too. But I'm willing to look past it specifically for this match because I'm pumped for it. And then the other major announcement we got is that we are going to have Kenny Omega's AEW World Title match at Double or Nothing announced for later on in the show. So I'm curious to hear, one, what you thought about the announcement for the women's match, and then, of course, we'll get into Kenny Omega's exciting announcement in regards to next week.
Oh, I'm right there with you. The place popped so big when we saw that that
we
graphic
heard
on the
it
screen.
Too. Just so you know,
I
heard. You could tell it was a bigger crowd than normal, I think.
Cool, yeah. I'm so I can't wait to go back and watch the whole show on TV to see how it came across. But man, Britt Baker is a star, man. It just really confirmed it for me last night. Like, she got, I would say, the third biggest pop of the night, and she didn't even come out. Like, it was insane. The second we saw that graphic, we just lost it because she's just a star. What she's done within the past year, I think the heel turn that she made was the best thing for her career. She has improved so much, and it's exciting, right? Because you kind of feel like you're on this journey with her, and she's going. And she's first of all, she's actually one of the only wrestlers who actually like mentions the ranking systems and like has been mentioning it and like using that as part of her storyline in the past few weeks. So I'm right there with you though with the ranking system. To me, it's the main thing that I have with it is, besides the majority of the matches you're not even seeing because they're not on Dynamite, they're on Dark and Evolution or Evolution, but there's no, like, so once you become number one, right, there's no, like, once you're in that number one ranking, when do you get your title shot? There's just no, like, okay, once you hit number one, you have until this time to either cash in or whatever. Like, there's no, once you get that number one spot, what happens next? And like you said, with Hangman Page, like he was in the number one spot for how long? And he never, like, it was kind of like not even mentioned really, like, or if it was mentioned like in passing, but nothing substantial to the point where like, okay, Hangman's number one, when is he gonna, like they didn't, there's no like emphasis behind it, which they may have been doing obviously because they don't want the focus on that yet, which is fine, but in that token, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of the ranking system, because once you're number one, like when do you get the opportunity to actually challenge for the title? So if it's like once you hit number one, is it automatically going to be at the next pay-per-view? So I wish we would just have like a little bit more clarity when it comes to that, but right there with you. I totally willing to overlook all that because I am just so here for that match. I think it's going to be a really, really solid match. And I think if they don't put the title on Britt at the pay-per-view, then they're foolish. And that'll be the first foolish thing that I can honestly say that they've done, title or like match outcome-wise.
Yeah,
but I have faith in them. I have faith that they're going to pull the trigger and put it on Britt because and that's the thing I'm kind of interested to, and maybe get your take on. I'm just gonna assume she's gonna win, right? So when she wins, do you think they're gonna stick with her as a heel, or do you think they're gonna turn her babyface with how popular she's getting?
Well, let's break our rules here, I guess, and jump ahead. I usually go right down the card, but because we're talking about it, let's talk about the match real quick, because I'll answer your question, I guess, in long form. Well, later on in the night, we got the Britt Baker with Rebel, obviously, versus Julia Hart, who, by the way, looked about 12 years old. Which was so good. She looked like your girl next door cheerleader. She was like, AEW is so genius with the details. It's just such a small thing. But this is why I guess I bring it up. Is okay, so this is how the match went. I'll give you the quick recap. Was, Britt obviously pushes her around and is taunting her. She hits her with the sling blade. This poor girl barely gets any offense on, but she goes out and puts on the rubber glove, hits her with an air raid crash, and then pulls her out of the cover at 1 and ends the match instead with a lockjaw. Obviously Hart taps out really quickly, but she holds it for a little while. This is my point, I guess, to answer your question is, I am, we've talked about it, Britt Baker is slowly but surely, in my ranking systems of favorite wrestlers right now, is getting up to number 1. But she's so good because similar to, like, other heels, too, there's very few that do it this well. But I love her so much. I think I would pop while she enters, all that other stuff. By the end of the match, I'm thinking, God, this girl's the worst. Like, really, and again, I'm going to have to do some editing because I'm just unfiltered in the morning here, I guess. But, like, what an asshole. You know what I mean? Like, when she puts her in the lockjaw and pulls her out of the cover, and this girl who looks like the girl next door, who looks like, sweet as pie, to use a really bad expression. Like, they couldn't have put a better squash match together to have it very, very clear, this chick is a heel, you're supposed to boo her. We don't get enough of that, and so I love that. I thought that was done so well. So yes, I don't think they're going to turn her face. I think they're going to keep her as a heel, because I think although she's awesome, and yes, we love her so much, but I think we love her because we can appreciate her work. I'd boo her if I was there, and I'm curious to know what the actual audience was like, because I didn't write it down, and I don't remember. Towards the end of the match, I'd be booing her. So I think they're going to put the title on her, hopefully. If they don't, it's the same kind of thing like I've told you. I'd be mad, but I have trust in AEW that there's a bigger plan, but I can't see them going anywhere else besides having Britt win. But I do, I think they're going to keep her as a heel, because I think this is where she thrives the most. I think her and Roman Reigns could battle for the best heel turn of the century, in my opinion. So, in regards to where their career went afterwards. So that's my thoughts on it. What are your thoughts on the match? And yeah, what was it like in person? What did the atmosphere change in regards to Britt Baker? Because you said they were cheering for her at first.
No, it didn't change. And maybe, I don't know if it would have had any difference in the actual, if she was like at their live, but and with the night where we were just, I think, still just caught up in that high of like just, I guess, quote unquote, seeing her and just being excited to actually have win. And when she left her face, she just, so I was kind of concerned about it too, just because with how popular she's getting, and that's why I asked your opinion. I'm kind of concerned, like, once they get to the pay-per-view, that they will cheer her if and when she does win the title, especially especially since Sheeta, you really don't have that emotional, like the emotional investment in Sheeta, or at least let me speak for myself. I don't really. She's a great worker and everything like that, and I don't hate her matches or anything like that, but the character just isn't there. Whereas Britt, like you're so invested in, and like you want to cheer her, of course, right? But you want to boo her as well. So I don't know. I'm kind of concerned that fans just may continue to cheer her, and they may be forced to turn her. But I don't know. I think if anything, that she's developed enough skills to be able to turn the fans back on her just as quickly. So I'm just happy that they're finally going in that direction, and we have something to look forward to now. And because the build and the mic work is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in that regards too, I have to say, I'm with you. I don't have a lot of emotional investment in Karshida, but I'll say she's got a very similar Daniel Bryan quality, where even when I don't have that emotional investment per se, when she gets in the ring, all of a sudden, I do. And I think that's obviously credit to her for being just a great storyteller in the ring and a great wrestler. And I know a lot of the women backstage have said the same thing, that she's been such a great influence on them in that regard. But just more experienced. But I think that, like you said, Britt Baker's mic work and all that stuff, she might get cheered when she actually wins the title, because we're all going to be so happy that, she's got the title. But I think, I think the next night on Dynamite, her mic work is going to get people booing again. And I really think she could take some tips from MJF, who's someone who's so talented, but God, you hate him so much still. So, but that leads me to my next point, I guess, with this whole thing. After the match, we get no promo. Instead, we get some crap about Taz and Christian Cage and what was wrong with the, his kill switch or something. I was so mad about this, I didn't even recap it. I was thinking to myself, I was like, what an idiotic decision not to have... You put Britt Baker on the show, obviously, because like you said, she's so marketable. She's just she's so on point right now that of course you want to put her on a show where there are going to be some casual fans tuning in, because if I was a casual fan, I'd probably stick around for Britt Baker. But you didn't even give her the mic after the match to cut some promo about Double or Nothing coming up or something, like, again, to get her heat back, like you said, because apparently they're cheering her in person. So I hated that. I thought that was so stupid and such a missed opportunity. But like I said, I thought she did a great job. Such an excellent heel, because I love her, but she still makes me like strongly dislike her in the moment. So I was curious about your thoughts. Did you expect a promo?
Honestly, I didn't, just because I would have expected if it was live, right? But since we were watching it on screen, I didn't really expect it. And I figured they were probably pressed for time with how long the main event was going to be. So being there live, I didn't. But if I was in your shoes at home, I most likely would have as well. So I totally get where you're coming from there. But they're probably saving that for next week. They're probably going to give her like a nice 5-10 minute segment, come out and say her piece, and then kind of really set the stage there and then build upon it from there.
Yeah, I hear you, and I think she did a lot of talking in the ring, but definitely with how that match went. But all right, let's rewind here, because after we had the obviously the first match of the night, our second match was QT Marshall, excuse me, not Marshall. I mean, Justin Roberts didn't even get it right, versus Cody Rhodes. We talked a little bit yesterday too about the Road to Blood and Guts, and if you haven't seen that, I don't care if you already watched the show, go watch the Road to. It was really good in regards to the actual Blood and Guts match. The QT Marshall, I'm just going to end up saying Marshall because I can't remember that, but maybe I'll put an accent on the A just to remind myself. But that part was weird in the Road to. It felt very like, I don't know if you watched NXT this week, but Raquel Gonzalez and Mercedes Martinez had like this back and forth interview thing that they do on there, and it felt very scripted almost, and this, oddly enough, for AEW felt really scripted on that Road to. So before we get into the match, I know you had some thoughts on that as well. What did you think about the weird Road to part with QT Marshall?
Yeah, not here for it. It was, like you said, weird. And it was because on the Road to, the whole build-up for the Blood and Guts match was so well done. It was just like the whole story, the whole vibe of it was so serious, and so it got you invested. And then you have QT Marshall talking to a therapist, and he's arguing with her, and it wasn't even like about why he was really mad at Cody. It was just people not taking him seriously, I guess, and it was just very odd. And then, I don't know why this stuck out to me so much, and this is probably not what they wanted people to pay attention to the most, but at the end, like, she's kicking him out because she has the next patient, right? And he's like, no, I want more time. So he gives her all this money and then still leaves. And I'm like, bro, you just paid how much and then to extend your time and then you just leave. Like, that made no sense to me.
And
And
then she
like,
starts
that
counting
was,
the bills. I love that. She's like
yeah.
straightening out.
Right, and then I was just waiting for her to say, okay, Cody, or something like that. Like, Cody, it's your time, or something like that. Like, I wanted to know who the next patient was. So, for me personally, like, that was where my head was at, which I guess maybe shows the lack of care I had for what he was actually saying, because it just didn't make sense, right? And nothing against him, because he, from what I hear, he's a great trainer, and he's really done well, like, and done wonders for everyone, like, training-wise back at their facility in Georgia and everything like that. So, kudos to him for everything he's done behind the scenes, but I'm not into it, man. I appreciate the effort, but just not here with it. But yeah, the whole money thing just really stuck out to me, because like, it was a nice amount of $100 bills there or whatever, and then he just leaves. So I'm just like, okay, well, you just literally gave away free money. So there's that. But yeah, it just kind of, it took away from the seriousness in the build up to the blood and guts. If anything, I would have maybe had QT like at the beginning, and it was just weird too, because the road to it was just the blood and guts and then QT, and then that was it. So
Yeah.
nothing else really on the show. So it was just, you throw QT in there and part of the road to, like, out of all the other matches, like, and there was no appearance from Cody or anything like that. So just kind of odd choices there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. If I were to have done this, I think I would have. I wonder if it would have been better if it was a totally separate thing, maybe. But when I was clicking to watch the actual Road 2 thing, I was surprised it was like only 15 minutes. Because I was
Yeah, me
thinking,
too.
yeah, they probably are hyping up this Blood and Guts thing for a while. I figured they would have done some other stuff, maybe a little stuff about Britt Baker. Again, maybe I'm just biased because I'm always down for that. Or whatever else, but I'm with you. It was weird. But, where are we at now? Okay, so the actual match itself, I'll give you the recap and throw it to you. The match starts obviously with Cody going after QT, just angry. Tries to throw him into, tries to whip him with the weight belt. This was weird to me, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Tries to whip him with the weight belt. The ref takes it away, but then QT hits him with his own. There's no DQ. Maybe I'm missing that, and again, maybe my memory is terrible, so I'm not sure how much they've done this in the past, but that's a foreign object, right? So I would
Took
think.
me out of it completely.
So I didn't get that, but they start throwing right hands back and forth. Cody rakes the eyes. Weird, but I get it. I guess just out of anger. Later on, Marshall hits him with the butterfly suplex off the top, which looked really good, and then followed by a German. Rhodes rolls to the floor, and then QT follows him and goes after Arn Anderson, and Arn punches him and starts grinding his head against the ring post. This was my favorite part about the match. The refs have to, like, pull him off and are, like, holding him back and have to eject him. There's, like, 3 refs. I looked it up. Arn is 62 years old. You got 3 refs having to hold this man, this 62-year-old, back from going after QT. I actually thought that was really good storytelling just to have, because Arn Anderson is obviously pissed too. So yeah, we come back from commercial and they do that double cross body spot, which I think, I just was telling my fiance too, quick side note, like, has been done so much better so many other times. I actually really loved that spot, but I just didn't think this one looked as good as, like, my mind went to, like, CM Punk, Kofi Kingston, or CM Punk R-Truth, oddly enough. Cody slingshots him with a sunset flip attempt, but instead pulls his pants down, so he gets a nice ass shot for everybody in attendance, or I guess not really, because it wasn't live. And I know it probably was unintentional, but I actually thought it was really good storytelling, because of the idea that, like you said, in the Road to, QT is talking about how he feels embarrassed by Cody all the time, and here we go again, he just flashed him, to the whole crowd. And then follows it up with a DDT and a moonsault for a near fall. He goes for the beautiful disaster, but Marshall ducks and hits Cody with the crossroads for another near fall. They go back and forth with pile driver reversals. It was funny, but kind of cool. I've never seen it reverse that many times. And Cody hits him with a tombstone for a near fall. Followed up with a little mercy. He tries to help QT up, but QT gives him the finger, and then Cody puts him in the figure 4 for the tap out victory. After the match, a Go-Go comes out and hits him with the punch to the ribs, and then lays the British flag on top of him, insult to injury. What did you think, Ashley?
Yeah, the match was pretty solid. The thing and I don't know why it bothered me so much, was I was not a fan of QT kicking out of Crossroads.
Yeah.
I was actually really surprised that he did, and I was just not a fan of it. In totality, I think wrestling has really done himself a disservice with how many people kick out of like their opponent's finishing moves. I I remember just like, not to I guess be that person, but back in the day, like the finisher actually made a difference, right?
Yeah,
It was
a
a big deal,
finisher.
and if someone kicked out of it, yeah, if someone kicked out of the finish on the first time, like it was a shock, like, and it was a big deal, and it really got emotion. But now it's just kind of a given. Like now we're just kind of like programmed to see like, go, okay, well, there's crossovers. So like now he's gonna kick out the first one, and then he'll maybe get him on the second or the third. Because anyone really wants to end of QT, but this just wasn't the time for him to kick out of it, in my opinion. Like that, unless it was like a pay-per-view match, it just wasn't. It just wasn't the time. So maybe I'm just nitpicking too much on that, but for whatever reason, once I saw him kick out of that, I was legitimately surprised, which I guess was, the idea there as well, but not really in the best light. But yeah, and I'm obviously happy that Cody won, and it'll be interesting to see where they go with him and Ogogo from here. But I'm just wondering like how that match is going to be, because they've been building up. It's that one punch that he has, right, that really just like finishes the opponent, and just like really just like that one punch to the gut just does you in. So if it just takes one punch, so Cody's gonna have to avoid that one punch the entire match, or it's just I'm gonna be curious to see how the match is laid out and what it looks like. But I think it should be good going forward, and this should be a good little, I guess, test for Ogogo to see how he does in the ring as well.
Yeah, I'm with you on the finisher thing. If I'll play devil's advocate to this, the one thing that they've done in AEW, I think, to counteract that, the whole people kicking out of finishers, is they seem to be giving a lot of these top guys submissions. And so obviously, Cody Rhodes has the figure 4, and then we saw that submission by even Hangman Page to Ricky Starks the other week, and there was, and obviously Jon Moxley with the sleeper hold. So like, they're getting even MJF with the arm. I'm forgetting what the move is actually called, the Fujiwara armbar or something like that. And so they do have like, so as if the person kicks out of that, then they can put him in that. But I'm with you. I don't think this match warranted a kick out of a finisher. Let me put it that way. Though I did pop when JR said he needs to go to the hospital. His ass is cracked. It's so funny to me. I don't know why. Maybe I'm like just a little kid with the immature humor, but I pop for that too. And then I thought this was, like you said, I thought this was a Dynamite quality match, but it was definitely not a pay-per-view quality match. So same thing with the finisher kick out. With the whole Ogogo thing, I actually have it written down here in my notes as well. I'm like, will Cody come up with a cool counter for the rib punch? Like, I bet there'll be a cool spot, maybe where he dodges or something, but all I can say is I love the British flag touch. I think that always, even though this country is so messed up, there's still something about wrestling fans and, like, loyalty to the United States. So that was a really nice touch, in my opinion, and I'm interested in Cody versus Ogogo, because I'm no longer interested in QT versus Cody. I think this was, like, a really definitive victory, and they kind of blew off this feud here. But with that being said, I would love to see QT go into more of like a... Remember when MVP first came back with Bobby Lashley? He was like a manager, but he also still wrestled from time to time. I'm hoping QT goes into more of that with Ogogo. And, I love the rest of the Factory guys. I think they have great looks, but I think this is going to be Ogogo's time to shine. And the only, concern I have is Cody's kind of got a weird, subtle... big shovel thing going on, where he's kind of little by little seems to be burying a lot of the talent that he beats. Again, I don't think he's as much of a victim as others are, but I am concerned that they're not going to go with Ogogo here, and they're going to go with Cody. I really think the way, I'm like way out booking, right? But the way to go with this match is have Ogogo go over Cody and have it on Double or Nothing.
Interesting. Yeah,
Hey Ashley, you're breaking up a little
that
bit.
portion of it, but I kind of agree with you there. I think. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you want to start again? You were breaking up a little bit.
Yeah. Sorry, is that better?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, like I was saying, I haven't really put much thought into that part of it yet, the outcome of it. But I think Ogogo does need to go over. I think Cody, in a weird way, I think he kind of needs some time off. I think he kind of needs like a little bit of space because I'm invested in this, but I think this would be a good platform for Ogogo to really just show his dominance and just I kind of would like to see them go the Brody Lee route, what they did with Cody when Brody Lee won the title. Just go in and just demolish Cody and just like tear him up and really sell and nothing, no weapons or nothing like that, no outside interference. Of course, like have QT ringside, but I want to see if they're truly invested in this guy and they really want to make him, a threat. I think having them go into the match and having him just really pummel Cody, I think that would be the route to go, and then just show that dominance there, and then have Cody disappear for a while. Cody's got a lot going on with the reality show. Brandy's pregnant, and of course his EVP role and everything like that. Like, I think now would be a good time for Cody, and of course, like I don't know like when she's due or anything, but I think now if they had this match at like Double or Nothing, for instance, I feel like that would be a good time for him to maybe take like a month or two off and just have that distance and just kind of like not recharge. I'm not saying he's like, I'm not tired of Cody. Let me just, I guess, clarify that. Like, I love Cody Rhodes. He's one of my favorites, but storyline wise, he really hasn't had, it's just been different this past year. I think the first year, like everything was really story driven with him and like that emotional value was there. Whereas now I just feel like we're kind of just going through the motions and just kind of going through some opponents. But I think now they have a really nice opportunity to really solidify a go-go and to kind of remind you of that babyface Cody and show you that vulnerability for him, where I think we're kind of getting away from that side of him right now.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think that's actually probably what they'll do is have Cody go off for a while because, from what I know, he's obviously a great, husband and family man, so I think that's a perfect way to put him out. I also think we're so, like, our minds in wrestling are so tainted by WWE. We, like, always, because that's all we know for the most part, right? Like, we're always thinking someone's going to interfere, something like they won't do a clean finish, and no matter how many times AEW proves us wrong, like, we still have that mindset of like, almost like a fear that they won't just, like, do a definitive victory here. I'm with you, though. I think the correct way to go is just to have a go-go. I don't necessarily dominate. I'd actually like to see, I wouldn't make the match any more than 10 minutes, but I'd like to see a go-go go longer than just to punch the ribs and see how we can wrestle as well. And then, like you said, have no outside interference. Maybe a little something by QT Marshall, like a grab to the foot or something like that, but not to really impact the ending of the match. But give Cody a little bit of less of a knock to credibility. But I think Cody Rhodes is pretty much Teflon at this point. But I'm looking forward to it, and I'm with you. I think the best way to do is just to have it as like a definitive. I don't want to call it a squash, but just a definitive victory.
Yeah.
And see him wrestle. I think there's no one better. You saw Cody and Shaq. There's no one better to put someone in the ring with who's still a little bit green than Cody Rhodes, who's just an absolute general. Probably the best general in the business.
I agree with you 100%.
So next we had something I loved, which was the interview with Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. I don't know about you. I've been kind of down on this just because it seems like the same thing every week, them coming out at the end of the TNT match, or if not during, and interfering. But we had Scorpio Sky saying that Sting is nothing more than a mosquito feeding on the blood of this company, which I hate mosquitoes, so if I could not stand Sting anymore, this guy just made an analogy that will never leave my brain now. What did he say? What we do with mosquitoes, we kill them. There's a lot of talk about death on this show. Listen, Steve, Showtime's over, and Sky is the franchise now, bitch. The bitch line had to come in, of course.
Right.
And then Ethan Page says, Darby, you and I have a very storied history, talking about their matches in Evolve, but nobody wants to hear me talk about a bunch of matches nobody saw. Why don't we skip to our in-ring history and talk about why don't we skip our in-ring history and talk about your medical history? Talks about the dent in Darby's forehead and a metal in his elbow. I've never heard anything about either of those things, but I wouldn't doubt it because he's Darby Allin. And says that those were all Ethan Page. Darby Allin then comes out of nowhere, attacks them both from behind, but eventually the numbers game catches up with him. Just like a silly babyface move, but of course we can't help but root for Darby Allin with that kind of thing. And then you knew, just from the beginning, that they were going to throw him off some shit. Like, right away, right. You knew. And Paige throws Allin down a flight of concrete stairs, and then the medical staff obviously comes to check on him while we go to commercial. What did you think about this whole thing? I think you're a little bit higher on Darby Allin than I am from what I remember, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. I think Darby Allin is a star and a star in the making. I think they really have something there. He just reminds me so much of Jeff Hardy, that enigma, that different guy. And besides all the Daredevil stuff, right? Because that's obvious. But there's just something about his personality and just his I don't give a you know what attitude, where it's just so refreshing and so different. And I think Darby is actually going to be one of those guys who's better fighting for the championship, right? Like that babyface fighting for the title and not necessarily being the defending champion. So I think what they did this week was, excuse me, a nice little setup for Miro, which we'll get into later. But I think that may lead into having him drop the title to Miro because we already have him. Because I think it was his shoulder that he was holding onto and showing that injury. Because that was, and not for nothing, like Darby, he's insane. Like there's no, like he actually was throwing down those stairs. Like there was no crazy camera angle to try to cover anything up, or he actually did it. So he's obnoxious. Like that dude is crazy. But I think it was a nice setup for maybe, in my prediction, of course, having him drop the title to Miro going forward. But I'm really here for Ethan Page, Darby Allin feud. To be honest, I'm not really familiar with their past together. I didn't really watch too much Evolve, but I'd love to see it. Ethan Page is a really good talent, and I actually didn't hear that whole promo, so it sounded like it was a pretty good segment there. But I'm definitely invested to see how that plays out going forward, and I'm interested to see if Darby gets a tag team partner because I don't see them doing Darby and Sting versus Ethan and Scorpio Sky. I mean, no disrespect to Ethan and Sky, but I don't see that being a Sting level match. But then again, I guess maybe you could have said the same thing for Team Taz, but I just don't see them having like a tag team match. So I'd be interested to see who Darby would team up with, or if it's just going to be a one-on-one Ethan Page and Darby and then Scorpio Sky just kind of like ringside type of thing. But yeah, I'm definitely invested in this to see how it plays out because if they have that history in the past, then I can only imagine what they're going to do going forward.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. But I have to say I disagree. I think that it's going to be a tag team match between these guys. I think that Miro's going to take the title away from Darby Allin, thank God, because we just talked about that last time too. That's exactly how I want this whole thing to go down. You've got apparently they need to save face for Darby Allin a little bit. We'll get into that promo obviously, but I don't love that. That Miro can't just look like a giant dominant guy that he is, but it has to be that, Darby Allin's going to be damaged because of this whole thing. But I did love that this was almost a shoo-in that Miro is going to win next week, and we'll talk about that obviously, and maybe a plot hole or two in that whole thing. But yeah, I think Darby Allin goes away from the TNT title scene and goes into this feud with Paige and Sky, and I think, in a week or two, maybe during some beatdown between the two of them on him again, we're going to have Sting appear with the snow and the
And he
rafters.
didn't appear. I meant to, that was one of the things I meant to point out to you. He didn't appear. I know you.
Oh my God.
Sting is your favorite.
It was the greatest Dynamite yet.
No, you look forward to him every week. Don't lie to me. Don't front. You look forward to him. And that stuck out. I was like, wow, this is the first week, right?
They're listening. They're listening
you got your
to
wish.
the show, as you can tell.
You
clearly.
got your wish, yes.
I watched, believe it, and not to go on a side tangent here, but I watched, this, what is it called? Seth Rollins and Sting, like, Untold thing, where they talked about the injury that supposedly Seth Rollins actually really didn't give this thing.
I just watched that the other day.
Oh my God, it was great, right? And when I watched that, I found I had a little bit more of a liking towards Sting, briefly, or small, like a small amount. So don't give him too much credit, but I know, right? Here we go. So I understand, I guess, I tried to get a grain of understanding from where people were coming from who maybe have a more nostalgic view on him and why it's more of a pop for them. And so I get it a little bit more, I guess is my point now. But it was nice to have a week without him, and they were selling the injury that from the knee bar last week. But yeah, I think this is going into a tag team match. I'm hoping it's not cinematic again, because I think if they're going to have the 60-some-year-old man go in the ring, just have him go in the ring, Obviously, Darby Allin, who can take most of the beatdown, and then we just get a hot tag. I think AEW is really smart with how they work with the positives and try to ignore or not shine light on the negatives. So I think this will be done really well. I just think when I say I think it'll be done really well, I think it'll be execution-wise done really well, but this doesn't scream exciting to me just because I have no emotional investment in most of the 4 guys in the match, but that's a subjective opinion. I think I'm able to see that my view on Sting is more subjective than objective, because apparently he's a draw for a lot of people, so. But I thought, like you said, the throw it on the stairs was awesome. You know what I mean? Darby Allin is absurd. I think Darby Allin is, like, just the kind of guy who knows how to just, like, loosen his own body up when he's being thrown off something. So
Yeah.
because I don't know how he's still alive at this point, realistically. Right. So I thought that was all done really well. But, you have any more thoughts on that before we move on?
No.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we talked about the Britt Baker thing already. Obviously, best part of the night, I think. We could both agree on, clearly. And then next up we had the 4-way tag team eliminator match, which was the Varsity Blondes, Jurassic Express, SCU, and the Acclaimed. You can tell by the amount I have, like, in a recap how much investment I had in the match, but also this was hard for me to recap because it was such a mess, but I will do my best with all this. Perry and Kazarian started off the match with the short back and forth, and then, of course, the match breaks down, and then we go to commercial break. When we come back, the Acclaimed are in control of Christopher Daniels, and they have a bunch of quick tags back and forth, but then Luchasaurus comes in, and, kicks, choke slams, just does his awesome Luchasaurus thing. I'm a big Luchasaurus fan. And the match breaks down once again, and later on in the match, Jungle Boy goes up top, but Frankie tags himself in, gets a near fall on Pillman, and they hit the the best moonsault ever, pile driver combination, and get the 3 count. SCU are the number 1 contenders again, times 2, I guess. Before I throw it to you, I just want to get this out there that, one, Max Caster's raps are getting a little bit more and more pushed every single time, I feel like. The stuff he says, I'm amazed they put it on TNT. But then the other thing is, my whole problem with this match was, one, it was sloppy. It was just a mess. It was an unorganized mess. I think these can be a lot of fun if they're done right, but this was so all over the place that I couldn't even follow who was legal, and I think the whole thing just needed to be agented better and managed better. But, with all that being said, even before we went into the match, I was not emotionally invested because, one, I knew the outcome, which isn't always a problem, but for this it was. And if the ranking systems count, if they're as all-important, if they're the all-important ranking systems, and SCU are already the number 1 contenders, what was the point of this match? I mean, Britt Baker didn't have to earn her chance in a Fatal 4-Way match as well, so it's just problems with the ranking system. So, I don't know, what did you think of the whole match itself? I'm sure it was even more difficult to follow when you're watching it on a screen there, live, but this didn't hit for me.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, this was, I would say, the one match or moment of the night where everyone was pretty much disconnected and just, like, not really invested in it. I mean, it was fine, and for me personally, like, I didn't catch the whole match, and I couldn't hear what Max had said. The only part that I heard him say was Dark Side of the Ring, and that's literally the only part from his rap that I heard because, like, obviously they weren't. You
can bring Henry
live.
Back here.
So I'm going to have to go back in and see exactly what he said. But
just tell Tom that I'm right in the middle of something.
Like you said, it was,
and so you have to go pick him up.
And it felt unnecessary.
You can bring him back here, and I'll bring him back to the house. Because by the time you come back, I'll be done.
Since it was going to be a big night. But I'm right there with you. I'm a big fan of Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy. I think that they...
Love you,
I don't see that they've dropped the ball, but I just wish that they would kind of get more attention, especially Luchasaurus, because he's just a freak with what he can do with his size and in the ring. He's just so talented and just so athletic, and I think that they really have something there. So yeah, I was not really. It was a fine match, I guess, but it kind of lost my interest there, and I kind of zoned out a little, to be honest with you.
Yes. Yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, Luchasaurus. I think obviously people are talking a lot about Jungle Boy and all that stuff, but I think Luchasaurus is definitely a sleeper on all this stuff too. I don't think he nearly gets enough recognition. So I'm with you. This was weird. This was just this was not nearly as much fun and good of a match as a lot of the other stuff on the card. So let's move on. No, not give it any more time on this podcast and get into what was next, which was the Moxley. Was it you? How to pronounce it? Was it Yuji Nagata? Did you get that? There's the show the promo.
Yeah, Yuji Nagata.
Yuji Nagata video package. They showed a bunch of New Japan Pro Wrestling hyping up Jon Moxley's title defenses, and and his IWGP United States World Heavyweight Championship defenses. Did I say that already? I'm losing my spot. And then gave awesome promos back and forth from the both of them. The only thing I have to say about this was Moxley always has such a great one-liner in these promos. My favorite one this time was that once the bell rings, I have no respect for anyone.
Yes.
I'm curious to know
So
what
good.
you think, how this match is going to go, and then also how did you like the promo?
Love the promo.
Bubba's, come here. Come here.
It's amazing because I feel like
Come here,
the
Bubba's.
Moxley that we got in the promo and then the Moxley that we got with the whole Kingston and Omega angle was completely different. Like, and I think that's why I'm kind of a little down on the whole, or not as invested as it normally would be with the whole Omega and angle, because there's, like we said, there's no clear direction, but the promo work, we're just kind of missing it. And when Moxley is truly set on something, has focus and, you know, has an idea of where they're going, like, he's just so solid. And not to say that they've been lacking on the mic, him and Kingston, at all, but it's just like a different serious tone, I think. And just more certainty in what he's saying. And you can tell, like, he's probably one of the best at telling a story with his promo. Like, he has a beginning, a middle, and an end. He has a point where he talks about, like, himself, you know, but he puts over his opponent in this way that he's not pandering to them, but he's not selling them short. He's giving them their respect, but he's not, like, overdoing it. And then he like you said, throws in that one little one-liner where it's just like, yep, that's it. It just kind of, like, wraps up the whole promo in and of itself. And that's it. And you're left and you're like, you're so excited to see it. Like, even if you've never seen a Nagano match in the past, like, you don't care, like, you're invested in it, and you're like, oh, it has a big fight feel to it, just because of a minute and a half promo that Moxley did. So I'm right there with you. I love Moxley. I honestly think he's probably one of their biggest stars that they have. I would say maybe not name wise, because your casual fan is obviously going to know Chris Jericho, but I think he was probably the biggest coup that they got from WWE, and I think that was such a good decision. And I'm just so happy that Moxley's in AEW, because this is the John Moxley that everyone deserves, not Dean Ambrose. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100% in agreement with you. I'm having a bit of a work emergency as we go through this, and my dog is now up in my face crying because his favorite mom left the house. So if you hear dog whining in the background of this podcast, I apologize in advance. He's
know
like
the
looking
feeling.
at
I've
me
been
like,
there.
you're calling me out for being a crybaby. Yeah, I am. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Moxley is absolutely one of the best acquisitions that AEW got, for sure. I really feel like John Moxley needs to talk to Daniel Bryan, whose contract is now up. I don't know if you saw that. Supposedly, and get Daniel Bryan to see the outside of WWE, how cool wrestling can be again, and how much you can love it again.
Because they can always go back, and that's the crazy part about it. Not to cut you off real quick or go on a side tangent, but, like, especially nowadays with, like, so many independent companies, like, and WWE is say what you want about them, but there's no closed doors, right? Like, there's no bad blood. Like, you can pretty much at this point go and say, right, exactly. Like, you can, in Ultimate Warrior, like, you can pretty much go. Kurt Angle, even in the past, I remember when he was in TNA, he was trashing Vince and all this stuff, like, and it was just like, oh, he's never going back, and look at him now, like, there's no way you can burn bridges there, and I think unless you like, well, never mind, I'm not going to go there, but
yeah,
you can, it was going to be a bad analogy, but you can, like, there's no reason not to, right? Especially with Daniel Bryan, like, once you get to a certain point, especially, like, you can go out, do whatever you want, and then come back. Like, you're always going to have that home at WWE. Like, if he truly wants to finish his career there, fine. But if I was Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson, go back to the American Dragon, embrace that, go on another year, 2-year, 3-year run, and then come back and retire in WWE and be a backstage producer, get your money, and all that stuff. So I feel like he'd be foolish not to take advantage of it right now while he still can wrestle, you know? Because that was the thing. Like, if you would have presented this opportunity to Bryan Danielson, 4 years ago when he was still retired and didn't think that he was going to be able to wrestle again, like, I think he would have laughed if they didn't, if like, you would have just assumed that he would have stayed at WWE, because look at how many options there are now. So I'm right there with you. I hope he takes advantage of it and just goes and just does, like, this whole independent tour. And then maybe, I don't want to say stays with AEW for a long term, but at least maybe a year or two would be good. And depending on how much longer he wants to wrestle, but he definitely needs to bite that bullet and just go out and explore other pastures.
Yeah, I think he's got too much hope in the WWE. Not to go on the side tangent of this too, but too much hope in the WWE system that things are going to change. They have this ability of like just mind tricking you into like similar to, I don't know if you remember, and again I know we're so getting off topic here, but the as we're talking about like a IWGP United States Championship match here, we are talking about Daniel Bryan, but which I think would be a great title for him to hold too. Just another side note, but. But, FTR talked about how when they left, how Vince McMahon had almost promised them that they were going to bring tag team wrestling back up, and make it important in WWE, and to the point where FTR almost believed them. It's just crazy what they'll do to keep someone, from going to competition. Because get Daniel Bryan to AEW, and you're hitting millions every week.
Oh my gosh!
At least for a little while, for sure. So. Yeah, I'm with you. Great promo overall. I'm looking forward to this match next week. Next week's card is stacked, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But let's move on down to the Kenny Omega Double or Nothing announcement. Awesome stuff. I'm sure to have Kenny Omega come out. The first live wrestler you said who came out, and you got to see them. So what was before we get into what they were going on back and forth? What was the crowd reaction to Kenny Omega coming out?
Oh. Huge. They loved him. Like you would kind of forget that he's even a heel at this point. Which I think that may have played more so into like you said, he was the first guy to come out, so we were just excited to see anyone at that point live. But Kenny, and I think this was probably his best promo in my opinion, especially since he's been a champion, at least with AEW. Like it had focus. Like he was confident in what he was saying. He was playing off of Cassidy. Like it was a solid promo, and I think it was a really good week for him. And I think it set the tone going forward for him to like not take Orange Cassidy seriously and just kind of like downplay him a little bit. And I'm curious to see if they're gonna have Cassidy pull like the upset victory over Pac to end up facing Omega, or if they're just gonna go Pac and Omega, because that would be another solid match. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Pac actually beat Omega. Maybe a year or two ago, towards the beginning of AEW. I'm pretty sure. I think he maybe. I don't know. I don't know if it was a pinfall or a tap out, but I vaguely remember that, and I could be totally wrong there. But I would totally be down to see another Pac Omega match. But oddly enough, I'd be interested to see how Cassidy would hang with Omega as well, because Kenny, say what you want about Kenny, but he adapts to any opponent that he's in the ring with, and he can pretty much go and accommodate any type of wrestling style. But I would just love to see him sell and like the Orange Cassidy kicks, right?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So I just think that would be really entertaining. And with the type of character that Kenny is, it wouldn't take any credibility away from him being the champion, or it even being like a championship match or a number one contender spot or anything like that, because that's who Kenny is. And I think that you do have that luxury there, whereas if it was like a John Moxley, like a more serious champion, like it would kind of be like, like, what are you doing type thing. But I think with Omega, you have so much flexibility with him as a character that I would really look forward to that match. And I mean, obviously, like Cassidy wouldn't win, but I think there would be some moments in that match where you could be like, oh, maybe he has a shot. But I'd be down for it. But the promo itself, it was really good, and I think it was probably one of Kenny's best yet, at least in AEW.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I'll give you a quick recap, obviously, before I give my thoughts. But best part, Nakazawa comes out carrying every belt but the AEW World Title for Kenny. Tony Schiavone, Kenny Omega takes the mic from Tony Schiavone, and Kenny hypes up Blood and Guts, and then basically says, well, that makes one of us who's actually excited for it. Just great heel work. Like you said, great promo. He says that he's been a busy man as of late collecting gold, whatever he said, gold, so just gold, really funny.
Gold, yeah.
Around the world. I'm not here for fun. I'm not here for games. So Mr. Schiavone, please just give us the announcement. And then obviously Tony Schiavone announces, like you said, Pac versus Orange Cassidy for next week. Another awesome match for next week. And says, the winner is going to face Kenny Omega for the title at Double or Nothing. And Kenny starts to hype up Pac and talks about, like you said, that he's defeated him before and, I think multiple times even. And basically just dismisses Orange Cassidy, says that just announced the match, that it's Kenny versus Pac. And then, of course, Orange Cassidy comes out. I'm sure there was a big pop because we got freshly squeezed chants. I loved hearing that.
Oh, yeah. Huge. Oh, you could hear it? Y'all could hear that?
Yes, yeah, we could hear it for sure. And again, it really sounded like a lot more people than a normal Dynamite show. I don't know what the actual attendance was in comparison, but it sounded like a loud crowd.
Yeah, I think it was half capacity.
Yeah, it was really
capacity. So, like, I think around a little over 10, because I think the whole venue for Daylights Place will fit about 5,500. So I think it was a little over 2,000 this time. But I think for a Double or Nothing, they announced that it's going to be sold like a full capacity. So all 5,500 people are supposed to be there.
Yeah, I heard that too, which is awesome, right? It was so cathartic as someone watching on TV, and I'm sure a lot of other people can agree that it was really nice to hear, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, more when we talk about like the Judas singing and all that stuff. It was really awesome. But basically, we have Kenny Omega laughing off, like I said, Orange Cassidy says, wait, Pac or who? And then talks to Orange Cassidy, says, you're a feel-good wrestler, you're popular, but someone like you would never be championship material. In fact, the only thing championship material about you is something you've clearly ripped off me. Talking about the sunglasses, he takes his, limited edition Ray-Bans, freshly squeezed Ray-Bans off, and says that he's the guy who made this whole thing popular. Says, you'll never take my title, but the one thing you have taken from me is valuable time. Love that line. He puts the shades on Nakazawa and tells him that they look better on him. And it's like Nakazawa getting the camera shot. Like, I love there's just the dynamic between those two is hilarious. Really, like, they're legitimately Goonies.
Perfect.
It's so good. But so he looks, he says he looks more like a champion than you, referring to Nakazawa, obviously, and says maybe I'll see you in 10 years when you're a fully grown adult. Who knows? Maybe I'll see you whenever, and we can talk about whatever. And then walks off. Orange Cassidy doesn't say a thing, and I actually thought that was played in really well to the whole dynamic between the two of them. And I'm with you. I think Orange Cassidy's going to win. I think it would have been pointless for them to do this whole thing unless in, AEW's brilliant, genius, long-term booking, Orange Cassidy ends up being a contender, down the line. To interweave the whole dark, what is it called? Why am I blanking? Dark Triangle? Help me out, Ashley.
Death Triangle?
Death Triangle, my favorite freaking tag team, and I can't remember the name. It's early, for me at least.
It is.
But to interweave that and Best Friends, you know what I mean? Death Triangle and Best Friends, their feud into this match for the number one contenders. What awesome booking. And you think back to when, Best Friends came out, just when Death Triangle was going to be the number one contenders for the tag team titles. And they had their whole little standoff. Like, that seemed a little bit weird and out of place at the time, but here we are now. That's what I'm talking about you can never put it past AEW. They've always got a plan. So awesome stuff, I thought, this whole thing overall. I think it's going to be a great match. I think pretty clear it's going to be Orange Cassidy, but I could be wrong. Who knows with AEW. And then, obviously, like you said, the match between Kenny Omega and Orange Cassidy. No one better to sell the goofy, fun, feel-good wrestling of Orange Cassidy, to sell the hands in the pockets. I'm calling a reversal of the One Wing Angel by Orange Cassidy just putting his hands in his pockets. The best reversal ever.
Yes.
Right, so I'm like already salivating just thinking about the match, as it is. So I'm pretty sure that's the match we're going to get at Double or Nothing. This whole thing, I have to say, made Orange Cassidy feel like a real contender. He didn't say a word, but just Kenny Omega is so brilliant that this whole little segment back and forth, not even back and forth, just this whole segment made Orange Cassidy feel like he was a legitimate contender, when last week I don't really feel like he did feel like one, although he's number one ranked because of, like you said, like the dark elevation and the dark victories. I think the best thing that they could do is put some of those on TV, like quick recaps of just the last move and the ending of the match.
At least for the bigger guys, at least for your Cassidys of the world,
Exactly.
And not have it just a shock like, oh, he's number one. Because I honestly was shocked when they mentioned that he was ranked number one. I was like, wait, when? When did that 100%. Happen?
I'm 100% with you. That was weird. So, it's not enough to just have the results. I think they need to absolutely show some of the recap of this. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think Orange Cassidy beats Kenny Omega, but I definitely think it's a great step in the right direction for Orange Cassidy to win in a loss, and this is going to be great fun. Again, that's all assuming Orange Cassidy beats Pac. Who knows? Before we even talk about Kenny Omega and Orange Cassidy, Pac and Orange Cassidy, like a throwback to like, again, we talked about it last time you were on the podcast too, the short history that AEW has, they are already drawing upon it. That was like the most exciting match between them two. I'm super excited to see part 2, and I think it's going to be different, not just the same thing, obviously, and the stakes. I guarantee this main event's next week. I think it'd be silly if it doesn't. So
Oh, it has to. Yeah, it has to.
So yeah, I mean, I thought that whole thing altogether was great. I'm looking forward to it. Any other thoughts on Orange Cassidy, Kenny Omega? Any dream spots? Like I have my pockets, hands in the pockets, reversal.
No, that honestly would be mine as well, because it's just so fascinating to me to see what he can do with his hands in his pockets, like all the reversals, the diving through the ropes. I'm just like, this guy, he hit the character gold mine when he came up with this. Like, he literally has to say nothing. He does very minimal, and yet he is over probably more than most of the guys on the roster. Like, it's insane. Like, who knew, like, a guy who gives off the impression that he doesn't care about anything would be so over, like, in wrestling. Like, it's just, wrestling fans and the wrestling world is just so entertaining and fascinating to me, because it's like, if I was, like, a different wrestler, right, like, it would be like, oh, he's so disrespectful to the business, he's not taking it seriously, blah, blah, blah. And granted, Cassidy does get his fair share of comments that way, but once you know his character, it's like you don't care. Like you love it. So it's just kudos to him, man. Like I guess question for me too would be longevity, to see how long he can last on a platform like AEW with that character without making some tweaks. But right now, I'm all here for it, and shout out to him because he's a genius.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not the biggest, Orange Cassidy wrestling fan. I'm a little, I guess, old school. Not to be that person. So,
yeah.
But I have to say, I get the appeal, and I get it, and I think the match is going to be great. I'm not taking anything away from Orange Cassidy, who's probably one of the most talented wrestlers on the roster. It's just, like you said, he has to do so little. Imagine, like you said, when he does tweak some of his character, and I'm sure he will have to eventually, because everybody has to evolve, especially with everybody being under the tutelage of Chris Jericho here. The evolution of a lot of these characters, I'm sure I've no concerns about that. The one thing I'll say, too, is just this came to mind. Obviously, we talked about the rankings before, and I made a comment about this too on my notes, is that here's another problem, right? Orange Cassidy's been the number one ranked for how long, and Pac is the number two ranked. Like, first of all, Pac being the number two ranked, why does he even get a shot? And then, why is Orange Cassidy getting a shot in like the first week that he's number one ranked when, like we said, how long was Hangman Page number one ranked? The only devil's advocate I'll give for it is that maybe, Page didn't want to face Omega yet, and maybe he was, like, behind the scenes headcanon being told, like, oh, you're up for a title shot, and he's like, well, I don't want that, you know what I mean? That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
But again, that's me having to create the story for myself. I just think there's so much work that needs to be done with this ranking system. It takes me out of it. It makes it, it's just a giant gaping plot hole in all this. But, it's Orange Cassidy versus Kenny Omega, possibly, so, like, how can I really complain? It just, if you're going to do it, they got to do it, and make it a little more clear, I think. Maybe you have to be the number one ranked for like 3 weeks in a row. Maybe it's as simple as that.
Yeah, which is fine, but we need guidelines. We need, like, okay, these are the rules for the ranking system. And like, cause I love it, like, and I wouldn't take it seriously, and I wouldn't be invested, and I wouldn't pay attention to it. So that's why I need structure to it. That's all.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. All right. Well, next up, speaking of number one contenders, we had Miro, an interview with Miro. He approaches Shivani. Poor Shivani, man. It just always gets the mic just grabbed away from him, right? And he reveals that he has a contract for a TNT title match against Darby Allin next week. Vowed to win it no matter how many risks Darby Allin takes. And, it said a great line, and I didn't write it down, but something about, like, something about not wanting to die and then wanting to kill him. Maybe you remember better than I do.
Yeah, something about going,
it was a good
line.
Man
who's not afraid to die, and he was the man that's not afraid to kill him, or something like that.
A lot of killing talk on this
show. Yeah.
I mean, whatever. Again,
lots of murder.
Lots of murder on AEW. Tune in next week. Find out who dies next. So, I love this. We talked about this briefly, just to make a long story go away. I thought this was great. The one, again, another plot hole. Since when, if it's in his contract for a TNT championship opportunity, why was he wasting all this time with Kip Sabian?
Right.
Just so silly. True. But that could kind of be explained. True. I get it. Yeah. But, like, where is he on the ranking system? All these things that just don't... But all in all, again, the end goal to get Miro to take the title off of Darby Allin, which I assume is going to happen, injury or not injury or forfeit or not. I hope they actually have a match. I hope Darby Allin doesn't have to just forfeit it. I think that's such a cop-out. Miro's huge. Realistically, it would take a lot for Darby Allin to beat a guy like Miro. And we've seen enough Darby Allin roll-ups on the big guys. I'm sick of it. So I hope Miro just absolutely dominates Darby Allin next week. I actually hope for Miro's sake that Darby Allin gets some offense in, because then it's not just like the excuse. I really don't want them to, like, especially, Excalibur, JR, and Tony Schiavone, I don't want them to harp in on the fact that, oh, Darby Allin was injured, that's why he lost. I want them to harp in on Miro's a beast, and that's why he just won the TNT title. And then hopefully we get like what I booked or what I dream booked a couple weeks ago, which was like, just open challenges, but Miro just destroying your favorite small baby faces like Jungle Boy, Darby Allin. Like I said, I'm thinking about just even Pac. I think would be awesome to see. I think that would be a really cool match, Pac and Miro. So a bunch of dream matches for Miro, who I think needs to dye his hair, and then 2 needs to get some needs to get some credibility back, because this whole best friends like 9-week gimmick and feud with best friends, although the payoff was great in the end, just really took away from him. So what are your thoughts on the match coming up next week? Are you excited? Are you hoping? Please agree with my dream booking here. Maybe we'll will it into existence.
No, I do. I 100% agree with you there. I think I don't want to say they dropped the ball with Miro, but I would not have brought him in that, I guess, comedic route, like, for lack of better terms. Kip Sabian is fine, but when I envisioned Miro coming in, I envisioned a monster. I envisioned someone who's out for revenge, wants to prove himself, and is just a monster, just wants to just run rampant on everyone. So I think that's what we're getting now, and I'm so excited for it. And I agree with you there as well. I think this does need to be not a completely competitive match, but I think Darby does need to get in some offense there. And so, like you said, that it's an even fight, right? So the whole story isn't, oh, well, Darby was injured, so that's why Miro won. Because for him to be a dominant heel, especially heel champion going forward, and if you want him to have it for a substantial amount of time, which he should to build up the credibility, he needs to be able to beat a Darby, because there's no reason why he wouldn't. Like, if we're being real here, like, there's no reason why Miro wouldn't be able to crush a Darby Allin, right? So I think you need to play into that as well. And like you said, going forward, they have to have like the open challenge type thing, and not even present it that way, because I think that may be more of like a babyface, like, taking on all comers type thing, but just position it in a way to have Miro put his own twist on it. Just have him claim that he's just been holding back and all that stuff, and now he's since he's a champion, he's ready to show who he is, and just in the heel way, and just be dominant. And I honestly would want to see him pull that for at least like 5-6 months. I don't see any rush in taking it off of him, assuming that he's going to win, right? But I think that they really need to focus on building him up and just having him be that heel, that nasty monster. And I would like to see him go against Lance Archer at one point. I think that'd be a fun match too, because I think that I think they need to keep him as a babyface, because I think they're kind of heavy on like the big heel guys. So I think Archer would be a good babyface, especially with Jake there as an interesting dynamic. So I think there's a lot of opportunities with Miro going forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You just made me think, like, I just didn't even know I wanted this match, but give me Luchasaurus versus Miro. That would be fun. Like, 2 big guys who are just unbelievably athletic. Yeah, I'm with you. I think even, like, first of all, if Darby Allin rolls up Miro and doesn't lose the title next week, you're going to hear a rant on this show. Because logistically it just makes absolutely no sense. But with Miro, if he like you said, if the story is that Darby Allin, is injured and that's why Miro won, and not because Miro is this big dominant guy, I have faith in AEW that they'd be able to build him back up and get his heat back, just like giant TNT squash matches essentially, which is a new dynamic. I think I'd really love to see that. Like, I've never seen open challenges like that before. It's usually this awesome competitive match, and that's what it's known for, but like, let's put like a new tone on top of, open challenges. Kind of like a better version of what Sheamus is trying to do on Raw. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love a good squash match, though. I'm not even gonna lie.
Yeah, I do
something
too.
About it.
Something about, especially a big guy versus a little guy, too.
Yes.
Just the messed up part of my brain loves that as well. All right, well, let's move on then to the main event, which was the Blood and Guts match. The Pinnacle versus the Inner Circle. First up, starting this match, and I had, like, dream booked this in my head to my poor fiance who had to listen to me, and I said this is exactly how I wanted to start, which was Sammy Guevara and Dax Harwood. Sammy Guevara starts off the match, takes the fight to Dax, this awesome flip over the ropes, but gets stopped obviously with the huge spine buster. Sammy takes control again, and they go at it on the top ropes, and Dax spills off and injures his knee. I don't think that was intentional because they really didn't go back to the well with that, which I thought was weird. So, but he gets opened up immediately by getting slammed back and forth into the cage. So obviously Dax Harwood is the first one to be opened up. And then next in comes Shawn Spears. Shawn enters the match, and right before he does, Sammy hits this awesome springboard cutter to Dax. And Spears hits Guevara with an unprotected chair shot to the head. A lot of those in this match. Cutting him open. Before we obviously continue to Ortiz coming in, just any thoughts on the beginning of this match?
Sammy is a star. Sammy is a star in the making, I'll
100%.
say. He's not a star yet, but man, I think what they did maybe however long ago it was, maybe a month ago now, probably longer than that, when Sammy was kicked out or left the inner circle, I think that was the best thing for him, for that babyface turn for him. I think that was the best thing that they could have done, especially with the direction that they're going in now with the inner circle, having them all babyfaces. But man, Sammy's got something there, and I think this is a nice slow burn to the beginning of a star for Sammy, because I think he could really be I don't want to say it like this, but maybe the next Jeff Hardy, in the sense that he's a smaller guy, right? So you wouldn't really look at him and think, oh, heavyweight champion. And he's still very young too, so I'm sure he'll grow and just get, beefier and stuff. But I just think that there's something about him, and even if he's not world champion, and I think that's what us as fans kind of forget too. We just oh, everyone has to be champion, but I think world champion. But I think Sammy could be one of those a good a solid upper mid card act, and I think that would be the perfect a TNT champion, but not mid card, but and not necessarily main event. Of course go into the main event picture. But there's just something about him, and the fans were just so excited for him and just so invested in him, and just seeing him start off the match, and of course be them with having the Pinnacle have the advantage. It was just so well done. There's the story there was just such great storytelling, and if they just stick with Sammy, man, Sammy's got something. I think Sammy could be the breakout from that group for sure.
Yeah, it's so simple too. It's just such simple booking, and I'm so glad they didn't overcomplicate things. I'm with you. I think I always try to caveat, obviously, with the previous comments that Sammy made and the actions that AEW took regarding it. There's definitely caveats with Sammy Guevara for sure, but sounds like obviously he's I don't want to say I don't know if he learned his lesson or whatever, but it did sound like AEW took correct measures in the whole thing. But I'm with you. I think that the style of Sammy Guevara, I think AEW does such a great job. I think Pac is the first one who can come to my mind, but with these awesome wrestlers who do these incredible things, but they're heels. Which is so hard to do, and AEW, I give them all the credit in the world, does such a good job with having just these, wrestlers who can do these springboard, flippity dip, backflip, super kicks to, whatever, and still, come up from the move, you're cheering oh my god, that was awesome, but then you're booing him afterwards because he does, whether he's looking at the hard cam, the way, all the facials, whatever it is, I don't know the science behind whatever they do, but whatever they do it so well. So I'm with you. I think Sammy Guevara is definitely going to be a big baby face coming out of this. I'm excited for the Shawn Spears feud. Hopefully we get more out of Shawn Spears, who's kind of been a letdown. And obviously we're going to talk a little bit more about FTR later in the match, but FTR's contributions to AEW as a whole, but especially this match, cannot be understated or overstated. The Dax Harwood, we're not even 2 minutes into the match and he's bleeding profusely.
Yes.
It's definitely set the tone. So obviously Ortiz comes in next to even stuff up. Ortiz enters, throws a chair at Spears, jams Spears' throat into the top of the chair, and then chucks it at Dax's head. And then Sammy hits a Spanish fly from one rope. Obviously, let's talk about the assist. Of course, the real credit should go to Santana, who throws not Santana. Ortiz, I think it was. I don't know. One Proud and Powerful throws a chair at Spears, obviously, and then they go and do the Spanish Fly from one ring to the other. That was incredible.
Dude, it was unreal.
Credit to Sean Spears, too, right? And the pop, again, this is what I'm telling you about the crowd. Like, we could hear it. Like, that was awesome. So I'm with you. Sammy Guevara, like, how do you, and like, if they really lean into all that stuff babyface-wise, they did such a great job at making him such a great babyface in this match, especially having him be the one to surrender, which we'll obviously get into later on, but, all right, and then we get Sammy and Ortiz, and then Cash, Dax, and Spears are all in the ring now. Get assisted brainbuster to Sammy by FTR. Brutal. Sammy gets flung into the cage by Sean Spears. Cash hits the gory special into the cage. I want to say it was Santana. No, excuse me. Ortiz. What am I saying? Ortiz falls between the cage and the ring. That looked unintentional.
Oh, yeah.
These guys were hitting each other so hard they were moving the cage. Insane stuff.
Jericho even went to check on him and like pulled the cage back to make sure he was able to get back out.
Yeah, crazy.
Because they thought he was gonna be stuck between the apron and the cage for a second.
Yeah, I know, it was not, and it happens later on, I think, again, too, with poor Proud and Powerful. Obviously, Spears has Sammy in the sharpshooter, but then Santana comes in, basically just takes out everybody, plants Cash with the Uranagi, and just saves his team from the beatdown, but the Pinnacle quickly take control again during the commercial break. During the commercial break, Wardlow enters the match. I didn't get to hear the audio from that. I'm curious to know what the reaction to Wardlow entering the match was.
Honestly, it wasn't really like. I mean, it was fine, but it wasn't anything like groundbreaking. It was just like Wardlow's there.
Shut up.
Like it's as bad as it is. I think so. For him coming into the match, it wasn't really that big of a deal. But once he squared off with Hager, that was when people were like, "Oh, here we go."
Yeah, you could hear that for sure. So we had Proud and Powerful and Sammy versus FTR, Spears, and Wardlow. Obviously, Pinnacle with the advantage still. During the commercial break, all of the Inner Circle goes after Wardlow, and I never pay attention during picture-in-picture just to, like, expose myself there. It's too hard for me. I'm such an auditory person. When you don't have the sound on, it's hard for me to pay attention. But Wardlow fights them all off, just flings Sammy Guevara off him, and then flings him into the cage afterwards. It looked awesome. I want to see that match.
Yeah.
So the amount of matches coming out of this match is even more exciting than I felt like the whole feud in itself, than the actual Blood and Guts match. Just so much anticipation, but... Like you said, Hager comes into the ring, and you get Hager knocking down all of the Pinnacle, gets a huge, well-deserved pop from what it sounded like. Hager hits the Hager bomb to Cash, ankle locks to Dax, and Dax is tapping out. Obviously, that's not the end of the match for Blood and Guts, and then we get the spot that you talked about. I think we all saw it coming, but it was still just as awesome, with Hager and Wardlow staring off from one ring to the other. They go at it with each other, punches back and forth, and then Wardlow sends him out to the outside, and they start battling up against the cage. Not last, but second to last, I guess, and certainly not least, MJF comes in. Credit to the crowd. He got booed out of the building.
Mm-hmm. We could not wait for that.
I believe it.
We could not wait.
And that's such an amazing thing that AEW does, again, just with making the heel of MJF. It's just so well done. Not even AEW, let me give the credit to MJF. Asshole chance, and then obviously the Pinnacle take control with the 5-on-4 advantage. Loved watching watching MJF taunt Jericho on the outside, like, if you come in here, you're gonna die, kind of thing. Before we get into Jericho coming into the match, I'm curious again to hear about the live reaction while you were actually at the show, and what you thought about the match so far. I was so invested. I thought this was violent, but again, so well. Like not like the tag team match we had early on. Like, this was oddly well managed chaos.
Yeah, this had a story to it. Like, you could tell throughout the match there was a story and there was a thread. And every little spot, not to call it a spot, but every moment that they did in the match was leading to something else. And that was why we were so into it, because especially the build up. I guess let me take a step back real quick. Before the match itself started, when the Pinnacle came out, and I'm pretty sure they had to have gone to a commercial break, I imagine, because once things kind of died down a little bit, like, the Pinnacle just started, like, just wailing on the fans. Like, they were just, like, because fans, giving them crap and stuff, but, like, especially FTR and MJF. Like FTR, like Dax acted like he was going to throw a chair at a fan, and like they were just and Dax even threw like a water bottle into the stands just to just piss people off. And MJF was just screaming. Oh, did they show?
Well, I don't know. Maybe we're talking about the wrong part. They did definitely show the entrance where MJF. Obviously, he's not a fan. It's one of the AEW wrestlers, but I guarantee you, in promo packages later on for MJF, they're going to show it like it was a fan because it looked like it. When they're entering, MJF just pushes the person from behind the barricade. Yeah. It all looked awesome. Yeah. So I don't know necessarily. They definitely
that build up to when he got in.
Yes, exactly. They definitely cut to commercial break when the Pinnacle was in control a lot of the time, which I thought was so well done.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, but that's why people just could not wait for MJF to get in there and just wail on him, just screaming asshole, and just like MJF, man, like like you said, to AEW's credit, like they have done a really solid job of building stars. And yes, they may not be like homegrown talent or like whatever that phrase is, where I can't even think, it's too early, but not everyone knows MJF's. Right. Yeah, so not everyone knows MJF's name yet, but I could see him being one of the breakout stars for AEW where like your casual fan would know in MJF. And I think if they keep him on this route within the next couple years, maybe even 2 years, I think that he has that projection. But dude, he's a star, and they just cannot wait for Jericho to get in and just beat the hell out of him.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I know that too is, whenever I bring up AEW to Matt, which is very rarely because he doesn't obviously watch it as much, he always knows who I'm talking about when I'm talking about MJF. So great stuff overall, obviously. And then Jericho comes in. Standoff, the 5-on-5, like every War Games match or every Blood and Guts match has to happen. I love that This Is Awesome chants, and then they all charge and meet in the middle. Great visual, just awesome visual. Jericho starts nailing people with a bat. You have Sean Spears trying to climb and get away from Jericho, but Jericho chokes him out on the steel truss. That looked brutal from the camera views that they had, obviously, on TV. We go to commercial break, and when during the commercial break, Inner Circle are in control, and Santana hits Sean with a suplex on the apron. The Pinnacle starts tearing apart the ring, though, and sadly, we lost picture-in-picture. I don't know if anybody else did, but my fiance and I lost the picture-in-picture, so I missed whatever happened next. But we come back from commercial break, and the ring is completely torn apart, with the wood exposed. FTR goes for pile drivers on the exposed wood, but Proud and Powerful counter them and hit an assisted spike pile driver with Sammy. It looked awesome. We have a code breaker to MJF. Spears goes to hit Jericho with the turnbuckle, but Sammy hits him with a thrust kick. Sammy goes coast to coast with the steel chair to Spears' face. Of course he does, because
beautiful. Awesome
stuff. Jericho hits MJF with the turnbuckle, which looked really cool for me. I don't feel like they do that a lot anymore. So when they like tear apart the ring like that, it added to the match. I think JR said it looks like a tornado went through the ring. And Santana has a fork, because of course he does, and jabs it into MJF's skull and licks the damn thing. MJF is.
I didn't see that part.
Oh my god, it was disgusting. But he looks right into the camera and starts licking the fork. It's gross, but in the best way, in the most blood and guts way possible. JR, obviously you can hear the commentary when you're live, but JR had this great line during the match, and he says when Jericho came in that things changed. And I know it's such a small thing, but it was such good long story booking, because I think, obviously, after this finish, and we'll get into it, they seem to be writing Jericho out for a bit. And I have a feeling that means there's going to be, this weird dynamic between the Inner Circle. They're probably all going to go off on their own ways, because, like JR said, Jericho is the glue that ties this whole thing together. So just, little lines like that when they plant that stuff, I'm it lets me think as, a fan and fantasy book and think about where they're going next. So I think there were "We Want Guts" chants. Is that what you guys are saying? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
They're so great. So awesome to hear the crowd.
Yeah, we're pretty twisted. Yeah.
It can't be overstated, really. It was so awesome to hear the crowd. Wardlow tries to make the comeback for the Pinnacle, but Santana and Ortiz take him down with the chair. Sammy hits Wardlow with an unprotected chair shot to the head again. And then we have our last picture-in-picture commercial break. But during the commercial break, the Pinnacle takes control. Tully opens the cage, and MJF starts to scale the cage. Tully Blanchard, I don't know how old he is, too. I should look that up. Takes a steel door shot to the head. You see that?
Dude, Yes, unreal. I was like, what the F just happened?
And, like, no anything to make that look better than it was. It just was a straight up steel door shot to the head that looked awesome. Poor Tully Blanchard, man. What commitment to this match. So in the ring, both teams are still going at it, but we, during the break, like I said, you start to see Jericho scale the cage after MJF is already up there, and such a small detail, but Jericho, you can tell his experience in comparison to all the other guys in this match. He waits as he's scaling the cage for us to come back from commercial break. I don't know how he knows, but you can tell he knows, because he waits, and then once we come back from commercial break, he starts to climb the cage again. Once they're both on the top of the cage, oh god, I don't know if you can hear that, but here we go with the whining. Once we get to they're both on the top of the cage when we come back from commercial break, MJF is just covered in blood, and you can't help but feel like MJF is a plan. The whole story of this being like a mind game rather than like who's actually the better wrestler, I thought was really well played out in this match. Jericho puts the walls on MJF on the top of the cage, but he escapes with a low blow. Before we get into obviously all the stuff that happens next, just your thoughts on obviously when Jericho came in the match, the chair shots, Wardlow, all the stuff before we obviously got to the ending of the match. What did you think?
No, it was, and I think AEW deserves a lot of credit too, and of course everyone in the match, but just everyone in totality, I guess I should say, because a lot of times especially like I'll take Elimination Chamber for instance, like you have an idea of who's going to win the match going into it, and like in the Royal Rumble as well, like when you have these people coming out, like they're not really going to be like difference makers, or they're not going to win the match, or it's not going to end or anything like that, like a lot of reasons, or a lot of times you have reasons not to buy into the match quite yet, or just be like, okay, well, they're just biding time until so-and-so gets in the match. But it was never like that for this. Every entrant had their own story, and every entrant played a role in building just this bigger story that would ultimately lead to the end of the match. But it was just so well done, and I think the thread throughout this match itself was just beautifully done, and it created that anticipation for because we all knew MJF and Jericho were going to be the last two in, but it didn't take away from any other portion of the match. Like you weren't not involved in it because you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna wait to until the end. No, like it just made it that much better. And Jericho was such a star. Like a lot of people say what you want about Jericho outside of the ring as well, but inside of the ring, Jericho is a master. And like you said as well, that timing and just the control that he has, like you can tell once he enters the match, like it's kind of like a sigh of relief, because like everything just kind of like comes together and everything just gels, where you have like all these other pieces, but when Jericho's in there, it's like he's that main piece that just connects everything. So I think it's just so well done, and tonight just really showed it. And like, of course, we're going to get into the ending, but like you said as well, like you could tell, like he was waiting on something, but it wasn't so obvious. Like it was just so well done, and Jericho just deserves a lot of credit for the psychology of the match and just for everything that he's done for the story. And I'm interested to see how they play everything else going forward. But Jericho deserves a lot of credit and a lot of kudos.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think I was actually, I kind of had this planned out in my head as Sammy enters, and then one of FTR, Dax probably, and then one of Pride and Powerful, and then one of Proud and Powerful, and one of, I had my own routine to this match, but I wouldn't have been surprised if, Jericho entered at, earlier on, just because, like you said, probably such a general for this whole match going forward, but these guys obviously have enough experience under their belt to put this awesome match together. And so, like I said, they're up on the top of the cage. This is like what you said, like you didn't see, you knew something was coming, but you didn't necessarily see this coming per se. I don't know about you, at least I didn't. I thought he was going to tap, because, we get MJF putting Jericho into the Fujiwara armbar, or he's got his own name to it, but I didn't write it down. I thought he was going to tap, after the biting of the arm. So he lets him go, starts attacking the arm again, stomping on the hand, biting the arm, does this a couple times over. I thought Jericho was going to tap. I thought that was the, distraction, but, obviously that's the distraction thing that we're all supposed to focus on. Meanwhile, they're actually planning this other ending. It's such it's such a well done tactic in WWE that just doesn't happen anymore. Not WWE, in wrestling as a whole, excuse me. I'm thinking about, again, I watched an Untold with, I was talking about it last week with, Mick Foley and Triple H and their Hell in a Cell match. And Triple H was talking about, Mick Foley lit the barbed wire thing on fire, that was the distraction. Meanwhile, the actual plan was for Mick Foley to go through the cage and through the ring. Like, that, to me, they did such a good job at that with this same kind of dynamic of, the armbar and the submissions on the top are the distraction, but the real thing that's going to happen is Jericho's going to get pushed off the cage. So well done. MJF grabs the pinky ring, punches Jericho, demands that Jericho surrender, and then looks off the side of the cage. Like, similar to the Britt Baker unsanctioned match, not as good in my opinion, but I'm biased. His face looks so good. With the blood and the eyes, and obviously you couldn't see live, but when they zoomed in on it, it just looked awesome. And then MJF starts yelling that if you guys don't surrender, I'm throwing him off the cage, or I'm throwing him off the top. And we get Sammy surrendering for the Inner Circle to save Jericho. But MJF, the prick that he is, still throws Jericho off the top after he's taunting the crowd a little bit, and then looks down, says thank you to Jericho. And Excalibur has a great line. He says, MJF has ascended to the top of the cage. Has he ascended to the top of AEW? And MJF puts his head... Nice. Yeah, I know, right? That was a great one. Where am I? Explaining... MJF puts his hand to his head, explaining that he outsmarted Jericho and the Inner Circle. And that was the end of this match. I'll throw this to you first, obviously. I have my thoughts on the whole ending to this match, but what did you think?
So here's where things kind of took a turn. And so once they got on the top of the ring, or I'm sorry, on top of the cage, we didn't really know what to expect because we couldn't see, like, you could see the little platform that they had on the ground, but we didn't really know what was going on.
I was surprised they went up,
the ending of the match.
Not to cut you off,
yeah,
I was surprised.
And honestly,
I thought they were going to keep it in.
No. Yes, and back, taking a couple steps back, we were kind of like, at least everyone in like my little pod area, we were kind of like, once we saw Tully like cutting open the lock, it was like, really? Because like everyone, and not to be that person, but everyone craps so hard on WWE. Oh, what's the point of having a steel cage match? Because it doesn't keep anyone in or out, or neither does a Hell in a Cell and stuff like that. And not for nothing, War Games literally has a ceiling on the top of it, just like Hell in a Cell. Like, there's no, technically, there should be no way to get in or out until you undo the lock, right? Until the match is over. Like, that's supposed to be the agreement. So, and I get Tully's the heel and all that, but to me, I was just kind of like, it just kind of took away from me a little bit. Just me personally. And then once they got to the top, this is where the real confusion set in for everyone here. And I'm not sure, once the end of the match came, like, I don't know at what point, or if you guys even did hear any, like a steady, like, chorus of boos, because the reason we were, like, once we heard the bell go off, we thought we were booing because we thought that someone had called the match off. Like we thought, like, an outside, like a Tony Khan or someone.
Fiend Seth Rollins,
because we had no idea. Yeah, we had no idea that Sammy, because we of course you can't hear anything. Like, we had no idea that Sammy was even like pleading for Jericho's life, for lack of better words, or like, or any type of that. Because all we could see was MJF and Jericho on the top, and we thought that MJF and Jericho were going to try to finish it up there, not that anyone in the ring or Sammy or anyone else from Inner Circle were trying to save Jericho's life. We just thought it was just like they were just doing their own thing in the ring still. So when the bell went off, that's why we started booing, because we were like, what the F? Because like we thought someone had called the match off. So we were like just so confused there. And honestly, I didn't even know the finish of the match until I was on my way back listening to a different review show, just because I was so confused. I was like, what the hell just happened? But that kind of lost me there. And then from what I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't gone back and seen the actual video yet, but was it obvious that there was like a crash pad or like padding underneath of wherever Jericho landed? Because that's like a lot of people have been saying like it was like a horse, finish, because like it was so staged or whatever. But I don't know, like the ending, I don't want to say it was a little deflating or it took away, because again, like, just the risk Jericho, and first of all, Jericho is not in a position where he needs to be doing this. Jericho is a made man. He does not need to be in that position. That could have very well been anyone else up there instead of him. But he chose to climb up there. He chose to take that fall. And even if he landed in a pile of marshmallows, like, I don't care. Like, this dude, like, he risked his life, whatever. Say what you want about it. Like, even if it does look super, like, corny or whatever, like, taking a back fall. It's not like you're going face first so you can see where you're falling. Like, you're going blindly into the abyss, essentially. So it's just shout out to him and kudos to him for, at this point in his life and his career, just being willing to do that. And it shows the love and the passion and the faith that he has in AEW and MJF, because that whole moment and that whole encapsulation of that moment was meant for MJF and meant to get heat on MJF and to build him as a star. So I think in that aspect it worked, but the little intricacies of it and just like even being able to escape the cage to begin with, and then us not knowing why the match even ended to begin with, because we had no idea that Sammy surrendered. That kind of took us out a little bit. So that's why we were initially booing, not because MJF won, but because we were like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, you made a lot of great points, and I could definitely hear the booing. You mentioned the crash pad and all this. Let me go off for a minute about this, because this to me, the finish. Let me say first and foremost, the match was awesome. Like, let's preface it with that, and so it's just got very barbed wire death match feels, because the match itself was awesome, and the finish to this match was not exploding barbed wire death match bad, but it was bad.
Yes.
I love the concept of taking out Jericho, like the head of the snake, but the execution, like a D+ for me, really. And similar to, like, I love what you said too about Jericho. All credit in the world to him. John Moxley, in the same way, like, was about to get blown up, essentially, right? And so both these guys put their lives on the line, essentially, for this finish, but the execution just stunk, for obviously different reasons, but still similar vibe there. I saw someone say that if they, like, relocked the cage so no one else could have gotten out, you know, and started climbing the scale, because you saw, like, Proud and Powerful, I'm doing it again, was, like, scaling the cage a little bit, too, but then they just stopped. So maybe if they relocked
why
the
wouldn't you
cage,
go up there and save him?
Exactly. It could have been a little bit better. I get, like, I can understand, it takes a second to push the guy off, but meanwhile, it takes a while to climb up the cage. But it didn't look good. Maybe a little bit better if they did that. My fiance, the casual fan, right? I always use her because it's such a great perspective to take of someone who doesn't watch this with the eye that we do. Even she noticed that the Inner Circle were making like a real half-ass effort to go stop MJF. Maybe if they weren't going to relock the cage, they could have had the Pinnacle do a better job of stopping them from getting up there. But they're already all outside. So right. they're like on their way to getting up and stopping MJF and just nothing. And so another thing that like didn't make it so climactic for me was like Chris wasn't saying anything like don't surrender or you know what I mean? Like it brought me back to like the Hell in a Cell finish. Remember Jey Uso and Roman Reigns? And it's same kind of vibe. Okay, I can't get you to quit, so let me put your brother in a guillotine and then you'll quit. I love that idea of a finish. I think that's great. And I just think this was executed not nearly... That was way better than this. Jericho's saying nothing, like don't surrender or anything. He's just standing there. And I'm with you. I'm not stupid. I know Chris Jericho's 50 years old. And that's absurd to be able to do stuff like that. Like you said, even if it's jet-puffed marshmallows. But the production of the whole thing made it look even more protected, safe, and anticlimactic. Like... I'm all for the safety of the wrestlers.
Camera views, camera angles. You obviously know you're going to do that. So if I haven't gone back and watched it, but if it really did look that bad, you know going into what your finish is going to be. It's all about camera angles. You would have had all day to get the positioning right. 100%. And of course, like you're not going to practice that fall, obviously. But it's not rocket science. Like get a wide shot angle and there's just positioning. Have it looking up on Jericho falling and maybe not the direct angle of having him land right there, but it's just so many different ways that you can position it. Like you're a production company, come on.
100%. That was my next point too. That camera angles made it look way worse. But and you know what? They could have practiced the bump because it was such a big mat. They just could have made it look so much better than they did. And I'm all for the safety of the wrestlers, like I said. But like you said, you have millions of dollars. Make some fake steel things to go on top of the mat. The little things that they had look so fake. Have something make a sound.
Stupid money.
Yeah, like stupid amounts of money. Have something make a sound when he hits it. Like there was no slam. It sounded like a pff. You know what I mean? Like it sounded like a deflating of a balloon, or like it sounded like he just popped an air mattress. Which is the best analogy I can make for it. Like again, when you go watch it back, you'll hear. it sounded, or it looked like, have you ever been to one of those trampoline parks?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, they have the giant foam pits?
Yeah.
It was essentially that.
Yeah.
That's the best analogy I can make. He also really didn't sell it that well, in my opinion. I know he wasn't moving much, but, like, he could have looked knocked out. That would have added something to it. Your skull just slammed against steel, quote-unquote, a.k.a., like, jet puff marshmallows. But, like, you couldn't have pretended to look a little bit more injured, I guess. Just moving around, it didn't look great.
Well, and then after that, not to cut you off, like, once, because, I had to be that person and wait to see, like, does he get stretchered out or whatever. He just, like, they, of course, like, help him, but they just, like, he just gets up and walks to the back.
No
like,
stretcher?
He has his arms around, no stretcher. He has his arms around a couple guys, like, it was just, like, random, like, quote-unquote security, and then, like, trainers from the back, like, your Dame Malenkos and your Jerry Lynn's. So, but it was just, he just had, like, his arms around, like, their shoulders and just, like, walking to the back. I'm like, okay. And that was within, like, 5 minutes of the show ending. Like, not even, like, nothing crazy. Just
meanwhile,
about 5 minutes.
That NXT TakeOver, that, like, saga of an unsanctioned match, they had, it was silly, but they had them both stretchered out and, like, that jokingly going back and forth thing with them. But yet you fall off a cage and you can't, it was bad. But, I said, like you said, like, the distance of the fall looks so small on TV because of the way that they shot the drop. Ray Phoenix has taken cooler bumps on Dark Elevation, than Jericho did.
Oh, for sure.
Like, the Ray Phoenix's suicide dive looks cooler than this whole thing looked. And so when you build and build and build, like we said, not taking away nothing from the match, but when you build and build and build and you end a match like that, it's such a wet blanket. Because here we are, right? We spent about 20 minutes talking about the ending of the match rather than the actual awesome work in the match, because it's the biggest talking point. It's such a wet blanket, like just like the barbed wire death match. And so we take nothing away from the match itself, but AEW is 0 for 2 with me on these super extreme match endings.
Yeah, and I'm kind of at the point, so full transparency, the what was the name of the show? The pay-per-view where the death match was just on.
Yeah.
What was that pay-per-view? It's escaping me right now, but that pay-per-view. That was actually the first pay-per-view
Revolution
for them. Revolution, yes, thank you. That was actually the first one that I bought on pay-per-view. Like, because I was invested in the match. Like, I was so intrigued. Like, I really wanted to know, like, how they were going to pay it off. And I felt myself, like, very disappointed and, like, kind of, like, I don't want to say I wasted my money because that's too harsh, but I didn't really get everything. Like, for, like, you go to a restaurant, right? Like, you order your meal and it's fine and everything, but it just wasn't quite what you were expecting. You're not going to ask for a refund, of course, because you ate it and it was fine, but it's like you just expected more. You just expected that sizzle, and there was no sizzle, no nothing. So it's kind of how I felt tonight. Like, I kind of felt, especially cheated with, like, the first hour for sure, but, like, the ending was just like really, and again, like, I hate to even say it because, like, of the whole match before, because they killed themselves going into it, but it's just like, I don't know, AEW needs a finished person. I don't know who is really in control of that, but whoever they have building and structuring the match itself, yes, exactly. They need a Pat Patterson. They need someone there who is like, okay, or like a Dusty Rhodes. Like, I hear he was a very good finished guy as well. Like, they just need that one final, like, just touch there to just really solidify things. And I think that could be their issue going forward, because it's like, how many times you're going to take them seriously? And, like, and honestly, like, I don't know if I'm going to buy the next pay-per-view. I may, but it just kind of really, like, it kind of took the excitement out of it for me, because it's like, okay, like, and if I'm being picky, which I guess I am now, back to the whole Christian Cage announcement. Like, they do such a good job of overhyping and hyping things up. Yeah, so, and then you just kind of, like, it's like you said, like a wet blanket. It's like, really, like, that Christian, no disrespect to Christian, but it's like, that's your groundbreaking, like, you just had Sting come in, you just had Big Show, and all this hype for Christian. Same thing with the death match. Like, it was literally, like, Kane's pyro was more impactful than the ending of that match. And, like, and then tonight, like, it's just, I don't know, like, I feel kind of like an a-hole for crapping on him, but it's like, come on, guys, it's like, I'm trusting you. I'm putting my faith in you, and I want you to succeed, and I want to be, like, excited and proud of this and be like, yeah. And, like, I want to be able to show, like, a casual fan, like, maybe you gotta check out AEW, look at this match, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, now I'm kind of worried. It's like, well, damn, like, how's the finish going to be? Like, let me watch the show, and then you can watch it on replay, you know? So it's just kind of, I'm just kind of in a weird place with them right now when it comes in regards to, like, faith and like believing them, is if that makes any type of sense.
No, yeah, 100%. Like we talked about in the beginning, like Tony Khan's got a lot of trust in the fans, and I thought this match had a lot of pressure on it, and it was already a victory before the bell rung. Like right as the bell rung, the fact that they even got to have this match finally with a crowd, it was already a victory. Considering like the poeticness of they were supposed to have this when the pandemic started and all that good stuff. But like you said, it's just to quote. I'm going to quote Bully Ray here because he has great line about the idea that the last thing you see is the thing you remember. So right in wrestling, the whole match can really stink, and if the ending is really good, it's probably going up a star or two. Like, it's just the way our minds work. And so when you have like the vice versa of that, right? When you have an awesome match and then the ending is like this, again, akin to the barbed wire death match. I know a lot of people are going to be making that comparison, but it's like, oh, okay, that kind of stunk, you know? And we'll say it again just to like super emphasize it. We are not taking anything away from Chris Jericho or any of the guys. They just like, there was no screaming from any of the guys. Like you said, you couldn't even hear Sammy Guevara say I surrender. Like, there was no, like, there were no gasps or screams or shock when he pushed him off. Like,
why wouldn't he?
Oh, I lost you for a second there, Ashley.
Why wouldn't he have a microphone? Like, how could MJF even hear it? Like, you have all this noise, like, you have it.
Or, yeah, just, like, louder. You know, you're fine. Just, like yell louder.
Yeah, just like yell louder. But it's like, especially if this was a stadium, like, there's no way anyone, like, we had no idea what happened unless you're, like, ringside. So it's just like, just little things like that. Like,
have a ref come over with a mic, like an I Quit match. I think that would have been better.
Exactly. Just like little things like that. And like you said, and I feel bad like crapping on the ending because like I feel like I'm being like disrespectful to the match itself. But it's like we just want to help you. Like our feedback, I feel like AEW fans, like when we say stuff like this, it's not like crapping on the company. Whereas like WWE, it absolutely
we want
would be
it to succeed.
They should know better. Yeah, but like AEW is like a helping hand type thing.
No, 100%. I always say that too. Even with WWE, when we talk about like things like it's because we want it to be better. We have to watch this stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That's why we want it to be better selfishly. And so I'm with you. Just to I guess, try to end this on a little bit more of a positive note because I like we said, the match was great itself. It's just I have faith in AEW. I guess again, I think I'm one of the few probably in the world now that still has some kind of faith that just like the exploding barbed wire death match, like 69 me Don. You know what I mean? Like,
oh god,
they recovered that in an extent. That's hard. In an extent. There we go. They recovered it, to the best of their ability. So I'll give them that, right? But how many times can you do something like this and try to recover it
in a
again?
short amount of time?
Exactly.
Well?
Yeah.
This has been within a few months.
It had a lot of pressure on it to make up for that in a weird way, and that's not their fault. But like to have an extreme match like this, to have a better ending, and the thought behind how they were going to end this was perfect. It was just the execution, which is kind of opposite. It's normally where AEW struggles because usually the ideas behind a lot of the stuff is great. It's just the execution that just doesn't fulfill what they're looking for. And so I don't know, like you said, $1 million company, they had to have come up with something better. They already did the power bomb through like the padding. The power bomb by Wardlow looked more impactful than this from a couple weeks
definitely.
back. So, but to try to end it on a little bit more of a positive note, I have to say MJF looking off the cage saying thank you to Jericho was almost, that's a stretch, but almost good enough to make me forget about the anticlimacticness of the ending. I thought that was a really nice touch by him too. And, I think AEW is not stupid. I think that, the bookers and everybody in the back isn't stupid. They're going to know the reaction to this whole thing. I'm curious to know how they follow it up. I know we talked about there's going to be some awesome Inner Circle Pinnacle feud stuff going on, maybe. Maybe they do that. Maybe they just keep everybody separate. Obviously, Chris Jericho's got to be off TV for a while, but that was the thought. You said he didn't even get stretchered out, so maybe he's not off TV for a while. I'm curious to know what's your ideal way of proceeding from this, and then what do you think they're going to do?
Yeah, I think Jericho's going to be off TV for a while. I think he should be. I think if especially in a newer company, if you're building your history, you have a moment like that. Say what you want about how it looked, but they can ignore that. You can hype up the severity of it and the seriousness of it and ignore the actual visual. Just let the audio and let your commentators sell that story. You have two of the best of all time in JR and Tony Schiavone right there. They can sell, especially JR. he can sell the seriousness next week of Jericho's fall. Jericho needs to be gone, and I think he's going on tour soon, if I'm not mistaken, with his band. So that could be another reason why they went that route as well. But I think they're in a good position. I think this and on a positive note, does say a lot to the story building and into AEW as a whole as well, because I think Inner Circle can be one of the few groups who actually disbands, but not because anyone turned on each other. I think they can all branch off and do their own thing. Santana and Ortiz can finally focus on being an actual tag team and make like a serious run. Yes, and make a serious run for the titles. And I think Jake Hager can, when Jericho does end up coming back, he can kind of still be like a bodyguard type role for him. But I think even Hager, I was never really a Jack Swagger fan, to be honest with you, but he's fine, and he is what he is. I think he could have some impact there. But Sammy Guevara, like Sammy can just take off. But I think, and they can all still like reference and like like show like little threads and little tie-ins to each other, and not just completely like it can forget like the other one exists. But I think that they can kind of branch off and do their own thing. And when Jericho does come back within however long he's gone, if it's like a month, 2 months from now or whatever, they can kind of just revisit it then and just kind of have like a nice little reunion. And then depending on what direction they want to go from there. But I think this could be a nice way for they can kind of just like take a step back and not focus on being a group and just focus on their individual roles going forward, but not have that, oh my God, so-and-so turned on so-and-so, so now it has to be this type of feud.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I want to see Sammy Guevara MJF after this. Like, that's the feud I want, the biggest feud to break off of this. I know people are talking about Shawn Spears and all this other stuff. The only problem with that is now, how do you get away from Inner Circle Pinnacle again? Without Jericho, if you're going to continue like a feud, an inner feud. I don't know how AEW does it, but I bet they're able to. The other thing, like you said, is maybe everybody just splits off for a little while. I bet Inner Circle is maybe off TV for a week. I think Jericho has to be off TV for 6 months if you want to do like what you said, to ignore kind of what everybody's saying about this and really sell the severity of it. 6 months at the minimum, or at the least. But I don't know. I don't see. I feel like AEW is the kind of company that's going to hear the thoughts about all this and go based off that. I think similar to the barbed wire death match, they're going to respond accordingly. So maybe Jericho's on TV in the next week or two and they do something else maybe. But it's just, again, like you said, same thing with the barbed wire death match. Where do you go after Blood and Guts? So I want this feud to be over, but I want it to reconvene in a year from now. And I don't know what beautiful booking AEW is going to do to make that happen. Maybe MJF is the, champion, or I don't know what they're going to do. But I think, like you also said, though, Jericho's getting old, or like we had mentioned too, he's 50, here Tully Blanchard took a steel, door to the head, so who knows with AEW at this time, and Sting is wrestling, but Jericho's getting up there, like, so if you have him off for 6 months of TV, or, if that's what they end up doing, something like that, that's 6 months off a career that probably only has a year or so left on it, So, whatever they do, again, I feel like I'm one of the few that has faith that they're going to do something good with all this, and a lot of the other card was good, and like we said, the match was great itself, but, it's what a wet blanket, sad, but what a wet blanket. And for MJF, like, I feel like it's probably one of the biggest victims in this whole thing. This was supposed to be his moment. What's everybody talking about? The fact that it kind of flopped, I assume so. At least I haven't heard a lot of other stuff, but you said you had already listened to a review thing. Like, we're not talking about what's next for MJF. We're talking about, the pillow,
Yeah. Yeah. It's so unfortunate because it's like you said, you put all that work into it, and then it's just like the finish was just left so much to be desired, to put it nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ashley, any more thoughts before we sign off here?
No, I guess I'm looking forward to next week a lot.
Yes, you reminded me.
Next week is going to be another stacked card for sure.
If you have a minute, Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was going to say, if you have a minute, we can go over that card real quick too.
Yeah, no, go for it. Absolutely, yeah.
So the first announcement we have is Tony Schiavone interviewing Jade Cargill. I think we've both talked about her on the show before. Just great. I'm hoping, and it sounds like so far, they've been using her in doses, but I hope that her promo skills live up to her look, if that makes any sense.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I think she She reminds me so much of China back in the day,
Oh
and
yeah.
I think I think that she could really be their China, and I think that there's just something about her, like we talked about, and I think that they just need to be careful with her, and just continue, pretty much continue what they're doing. But I don't know, I don't want to see her with a manager. Just side note, like I love seeing like everyone vie for her, and I think that's such a cool and a different approach, right? Where like all these managers are vying for her instead of like just having her randomly show up with someone. But I just used to be her own. She's her own bitch, right? Like she's that bitch. So let her be it. Like let her do her thing. So I don't know, but I'm so with you. I'm excited to see where they go with her.
Yeah, I am as well. I'm what's it called? I'm with you. I hope that she doesn't get a manager as well. I think she sounds good enough on the mic where she probably doesn't need one so far of what we've seen. But I guess next week might be a testing ground, you know. So then we also have, we talked about a little bit too, the IWGP US Championship, Jon Moxley versus Eugene Nagata. Eugene Nagata.
Yep. Yep.
So it's just such a thin
No,
line
you did
to mess
great.
that
You
stuff
did
up.
great.
I appreciate you
Just
are
ask
my
Rick
hype person on this
Swan.
show. I love it. I guess we'll try to be quick here, obviously. But where do you think this? Who wins? How do they win? All that whole ordeal.
Yeah, I think Moxley retains here, which is an interesting thing because he's obviously it's not an AEW title, so you really don't get much story or anything behind it, which makes sense. Obviously, you know, like they're not there to promote other people's companies per se. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a solid match. I'm stoked that we get to see it on AEW TV. And I don't know. I think Moxley retains, and then we really don't hear about that title until something else happens, at least on the AEW side. But I think it's gonna be a solid match, and I'm just excited for it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I kind of actually have to say I like that he doesn't come out with the title all the time too. You know that it remains secret of this is AEW, that's that. But it does seem like they're opening the door a little more and more. I think I'm curious to see how him and Kenny Omega start to lose these titles that they have in other organizations, because you want to remain strong in AEW, but then like how much of an impact is it going to have if he loses it on a New Japan show, you know, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and real quick, not to cut you off or keep you too much longer, but I don't know if you've heard, but Andrade is going to be facing Kenny Omega for the AAA Heavyweight
Oh, I
Championship.
didn't know that was confirmed. I knew Andrade challenged him, but I didn't know it was confirmed.
Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty sure that it was just confirmed like very recently. Then that I think they're just waiting on like a date. But yeah, it was because Andrade has 3 matches set up, and that was one of them that was confirmed. I just don't know like the logistics of it yet, but part of me is wondering if that's going to be the first one that Omega loses, and then it takes you into that interesting dynamic of should he lose the AEW championship before he loses the other ones, since they're hyping him and putting so much stock into him being the belt collector. What if he loses one of them before he loses the AEW championship? Like, what does that mean for him as a character, and what does that mean for him as the AEW champion? So, but I could totally see Andrade beating him for it, which is why there's like an interesting little wrinkle in there. And I would love to see like Andrade made like an appearance or two on AEW just to kind of hype that up. Just because I think Andrade was so like WWE missed the ball so much on him. Like I was such a big fan of him. I was like, yo, he's it. Like he is the next. I don't want to say it, but like he's the next Alberto Del Rio times 10, meaning that what they wanted Alberto Del Rio to be and how much stock and momentum and trust they put into Alberto Del Rio than being WWE. I felt like they could have done that with Andrade times a million, and he would have just been, besides like the English, but whatever. But I just think they dropped the ball, but I think he could totally just bring something different, just like a different vibe and a different feel to AEW, even just for like a week or two.
Yeah, first of all, I think that would be an awesome, fun podcast to be able to do. It's just like we just talk about the Kenny Omega belt collector, how dream booking, where and how he loses each title, and all that stuff. I think he has to lose the AEW title first, in my opinion.
Me too.
But just a quick side note on that, by the way, and we very lightly make a Alberto Del Rio comparison just because what an awful human being, But the Andrade thing with the English thing, I just want to throw out, like, he's engaged to Charlotte Flair, who's clearly an English speaker. I don't know how good her Spanish is, but from my own experience, like, of dating someone who doesn't speak a lick of English, and I'm not fluent in Spanish by any means, like, a lot more difficult than it seems. Andrade's English has got to be okay or good enough if he's able to date someone who doesn't speak Spanish well. So
I'm so happy you bring that up and that you've had that experience, because like that's what I just always go back to, because especially with him dating Charlotte, because it's like, okay, well, again, like I don't think Charlotte is like a fluent Spanish speaker. I could be completely wrong, but I believe I've read interviews or like heard certain things where like she had mentioned that they worked on their communication, and that was like what started their friendship, because like she was helping him and he was helping her, vice versa, and that's like kind of how it progressed. But it's not a make or break thing. Like if you love someone, or if you're into
look
someone,
at
it
Penta.
doesn't even have to. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't even have to be like a relationship like that, like boyfriend girlfriend or whatever. Or like it doesn't have to be like that type of relationship. It just like friendship, a business, whatever type of relationship you have. Like if you want something to work, you make it work, right? Like that. I just feel like that's just a minor thing. It's just a cop out, really.
Yeah, and absolutely. And if you, like, again, not to draw on my own personal experience too much here, but, like, big problem in that relationship was I'm very, as if you've listened to any of these podcasts, I have very dry humor. And it's a lot about the tone, not about the actual words or whatever, and any kind of humor. And so that was a problem where that didn't translate, if that makes any sense, for lack of a better term. And so Andrade's
totally.
English has got to be good enough where they're able to communicate enough where tone
And they're
translates
engaged.
to.
They're
Engaged,
engaged.
exactly.
Like,
so
come on.
something's got to be working there with the English speaking. So, like you said, missed the boat on that. But let's go on, I guess, to the other title, because we're so good at going on side tangents. But I would love to. We should definitely get on and just talk about Kenny Omega and all those, even Jon Moxley.
Yes.
Maybe if he doesn't lose the title next week, where do these titles go with the open door? But we have the Young Bucks versus SCU for the Tag Team Championships. What a stacked card of title matches. We've got 3 title matches and 1 number 1 contenders match. But I think we talked about this a little bit before. I'm thinking the Young Bucks win and SCU breaks up. Any other? You agree? Any other thoughts?
Nope, I'm right there with you. I agree. And if anything, the only other side note I will add is that I wish that they just would have hyped up the threat and the possibility that this is going to be SCU's last tag match together. I feel like they just really haven't referenced that, or maybe in passing, but that should be a big deal, because they were their first tag team champions in the company. So like if their first set of tag team champions are disbanding, then that should be a huge thing. So I don't know, maybe next week when they lose, I'm just pretty certain that they're going to lose. So for me, when they lose, maybe they'll have it'll be like an emotional thing, but I just feel like they could have hyped that up more than they have.
Yeah, and honestly, I would have put this match on a different card with all the other stuff going on. I feel like this should have been a bigger focus, but I'm with you. I think use the time that they had for the match on this week's show with hyping up that, a promo for this match this week, rather than doing some weird, non-necessary fatal 4-way. But I'm with you. So then Cody Rhodes to make a Double or Nothing announcement in regards to him, or I don't know if it's in regards to him or if it's just in general with Double or Nothing. My guess for this, just to put my input in real quick, is it's going to be some ladder match extravaganza royale of who's going to be the next number 1 contender and not win, because again, if SCU loses next week, that's another time where they had some eliminator. Why did they call it an eliminator, by the way? No one got eliminated.
Yeah, no one exactly.
It made no sense. We totally passed by that. But so yes, that's what I assume this announcement's going to make. Do you think the same thing? Is there any other chance it's anything else?
No, I think it's just going to be. I think it's going to be about him in particular. I think honestly, what's going to happen is he's going to come out here and make it seem like he's going to be making an announcement for Double or Nothing itself, and then QT and his group is going to come out and interrupt him, and then that's going to change into him having the match with the Go-Go and kind of going from there. No pun intended, but I think they got to be careful. Side note, really quick, they got to be careful with what they're doing with Cody and having him come out here and Cody's making an announcement for his future, like. It's one thing when you're the champion and making a declaration, but Cody is just Cody now. Cody can't fight for the heavyweight championship. Cody's not anywhere in the TNT title picture. So why is Cody coming out and making an announcement compared to everyone else? Like, if you want Cody to remain a babyface, and this is coming from, I love Cody Rhodes. Like, he was my favorite going into, I support him 100%. And all that good stuff. But I just feel like they need to be careful with how they present him when it comes to stuff like this. So I think they're fine right now, but they need to be careful how many times they go this route with him.
No, of course, I think they're going to the well probably one too many. I'm with you too. I was such a Cody Rhodes fan that I have a Stardust merchant, like I have a Stardust t-shirt. Like that's how much. Yeah, so I really like the Gold Dust Stardust. I really loved Cody Rhodes, or maybe it's just their tag team, but I was like a fan of Stardust, and that's how much I love Cody Rhodes. And I'm with you, but I think especially you want him to be a babyface going against a Go-Go, so it's just a fun name to say, going against a Go-Go. So I'm with you. I think it's you have to veer the weird line of producer and talent, and this blurs it a lot. And so I don't know. I think here's my the most outrageous that this could get is Cody Rhodes comes out with all these celebrity boxing matches going on and announces that him and Ogogo are going to have a boxing match, not a wrestling match.
Oh God,
That's
now that you say that, I'd be slightly intrigued, and I don't know what that says about me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was disappointed but intrigued, I'm sure.
Yes.
All right, we have Darby Allin versus Miro for the TNT title. We talked about that a bunch. I think we're both in agreement. Miro's got to take the win there, and how they need to do it.
Yep.
And then last but not least, Cassidy versus Pac, and we also talked about this, but the number one contenders match for the AEW World Championship at Double or Nothing. Again, we talked about this, but any other thoughts in regards to this match?
No, I think this is going to be a solid match.
100%.
I think Cassidy has to win this one. I don't know what that means for Pac going forward, if he's just going to focus on the Death Triangle and just getting them, just going that route as a three-man group again. But yeah, I think right now, Pac isn't in the position to really. I mean, of course, obviously, like we said, it would be a phenomenal match, him and Omega again, but it's just not the time. Pac's not in that mindset. Pac's not on a singles route. He's in a group. He's not really. I'm not gonna say he's not focused on that, but that's just not the direction. So Cassidy is a good opponent for Kenny to go against, have a quick 3-week, month feud, and then go from there with.
Yeah, I agree. I think Pac is a future world champion. I think they'd be silly not to do that, but I like you said, I don't think it's the time now. I'd love to see Pac and Phoenix go start towards the TNT title. Obviously the tag team titles look a little bit crowded right now with SCU and Kingston and Moxley. Hopefully we keep booking that. Maybe they'll actually do it. And what was it? Who's the other team? Proud and Powerful. Hopefully go over there too.
Yes.
So I'd love to see Miro and Pac, and I'd love to see Miro and Rey Fenix, who obviously have been heels for a while now, but, even though Penta's doing his own thing, these guys are it's hard. Like, you get Rey Fenix, and I, again, no matter what the match is going to be, I know I'm in for a good one, so it's hard to boo them. So I think they've done that for enough time where I'm ready to see, just the typical big guy versus the little guy, matches.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see, again, total sidetrack before we end this whole thing. Bring Daniel Bryan to AEW and have Miro versus Daniel Bryan, something that they've probably done in WWE before, but if I can't recall it probably wasn't that memorable for the TNT title. Like, just the idea of the dynamic between that match with the big guy and Daniel Bryan's technical wrestling prowess. Like, I want to see that down the line one time, because I think Miro needs to go for a long title reign here.
And talk about the credibility that would just gain for Miro and just add to him. And Daniel, and especially with the I guess the position that he's in his career, like, it's just, for me, like, whatever, I don't know why I have this visual in my head, but like the beginning of his match with no, his name is escaping me, what the crap, with Roman Reigns, like, just the joy and just like the relaxation, just like the comfort that he has. He's so comfortable with his role now, whether just not WWE specific, just with him as a performer, like, he's just having fun, and you can see it. And I think that as a performer, once you've gotten into that groove and into that mindset where you're not stressed anymore and you're just having fun, that just brings out so much more in himself and his opponent. So I think that would be a perfect foil for, like, a Miro going forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. All right, well, let's wrap things up here, Ashley, real quick, as there's commotion happening behind me. Thank you again for I know you had a long drive back from the show last night and all that stuff, so I really appreciate you waking up early this morning with me, early for us at least, waking up early to review the show with me. I'm so great to have you on. I know a lot of the listeners were really excited for it as well, and we'll definitely, whether it's, we could talk about Kenny Omega or another review show, whether it's Double or Nothing or beforehand, love to have you back on again. I'm sure we will be in contact as always. Finally have someone to nerd out about this with AEW. I'm texting you during the shows.
I know, it's so great. It's so great. No, thank you so much for having me. I'm just thrilled and honored to be on here, and it's just fun, like you said, to talk about AEW for a change, because everything is just so WWE centric, for better or worse. But
worse,
it's just fun to actually talk about. Yeah. Let's not even get started on there. But yeah, no, it's so great. So thank you so much for having me. It still blows my mind that people actually listen to my thoughts on wrestling. It's just kind of like a mind, what. But yeah, it's just so much fun. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm down whenever you are.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. It blows my mind every week too, especially the emails I get that is some people actually care about our opinions on all this stuff, which
I
is great.
know.
But just before we go off, I'll quickly mention that just in case you want to know that the promo picture for Darby Allin versus Miro, that Sting is in the background. So it's going to be big.
Oh, so so you're excited now. You're
pumped. Now I can't even wait till next week even more.
Now the countdown's on.
Exactly. All right, Ashley, I really appreciate it. I will talk to you next time. Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Thank you, Mimi. Have a good one.